welcome everybody to our second day of the homebuyer class, our first virtual homebuyer class. As we mentioned yesterday, my father, Jim Ramey, who has his MBA, he's a broker, he's a local real estate broker here. Last 22 years has been teaching this homebuyer class to many different first-time homebuyers, as well as those who are looking at purchasing their second home, want to know what really the nuances are in the purchasing process. So I'm very excited about today's session. Today we are going to cover really my favorite part of the entire homebuyer presentation, and it involves the contract, the timelines, how you're protected by the contract, what your out-of-pocket expenses are. Really I hate to call it a game, but it's understanding the rules of real estate and knowing how the game's played. And once you understand the rules and you understand that you as a buyer in the driver's seat through most of this and most standard transactions, it takes a lot of pressure off. So this is one of my favorite parts to teach personally, and I'm excited to hear it from my father, who is my mentor, and my dad, who showed me the way in real estate. So without further ado, Dad, if you're ready to go, let's jump right into it. And anything that you want to touch on before we get rolling?
No, just thanks for putting this together. It's a great format. This is our first real virtual, out of the chute kind of a thing. Last night I thought went pretty well. A couple glitches, and we may have one or two tonight, so we'll apologize in advance. But bottom line is sharing information. The whole thing with home buying, if you walk around with the attitude of I got a secret, doesn't really do anybody any good. So information is only worth any value if you share the information. So I think you'll have I hope, a good experience tonight. It won't be as long as last night. We're going to do a quick overview, I think, of some of the stuff from the first part last night, but really, like Brandon said, this is the meat and potatoes of buying a home. So this is the part that, pardon my phone here, this is the part that people truly enjoy in terms of giving themselves the biggest tool in their toolbox in home buying. I'm an old maintenance mechanic in the Navy, and we had a toolbox, use lots of tools, and Brandon's heard this analogy before. You never go to a job with just a single tool. You try to get as many tools as you can and use them effectively, and when the job's done, you'll know it, and you'll walk away with a smile on your face. So that's what we're hoping for tonight.
That sounds great. And then just also kind of an overview for a little bit more structure, some of the feedback we got back from last night. What we would like, we love the, coming from Mike Clowder. Just a reminder, awesome you guys are doing this. Thank you, Mike. We love the fact that you're on here, man. I don't know if anybody's ever been as dedicated as a student of my dad. And shows the passion and enthusiasm. Every time I see him, he's like, man, I just love your dad. I just want to give the guy a hug, and I love it. And he appreciates the knowledge and the information, the wisdom that you've shared with him and so many other families that have been impacted. And that's what we're excited to do tonight. We're going to rock it tonight. You're going to get some great information. My dad's, he never lets me down, so I know it's going to be awesome. And the biggest thing we want to do is we want to keep this engaging. I think my favorite part of last night was all the questions coming in. So as a question comes to mind, feel free to put it in the chat. We may not be able to answer it right away because there's certain points that we want to make sure that we really emphasize tonight that we didn't get to emphasize yesterday. So there's a few people I even see that stayed on for the entire duration. We did part 1 and 2 yesterday. There's more that you're going to pick up today, because not only do you have the basic understanding already, we're going to get more into the details of how to put that offer together, what it looks like when you're actually writing the offer versus a multiple offer situation. We're also going to get into a little bit more in terms of the cost, right? What are your costs? What are the seller's costs? What's typical? What's common? And then what is potentially negotiable? So we're going to get into more of those details, but keep the questions firing. That was awesome. Took us off a little track because we were talking a lot about foreclosures up front. Great questions, very relevant, but we really want to cover a section, do Q&A, cover a section, do Q&A, make sure we cover the full thing in this hour. And then we will do a final Q&A at the end. And I see a few, I'll give a couple quick shout outs. I see Mark Richardson on here and Jason Harrelson, two very seasoned loan officers that are here with some great information. We may have another 1 or 2 loan officers join as well that have reached out to me. But those two are an awesome source. So any lending questions, feel free to text to the entire group. And then Jason and Mark, if you guys see a lending question, feel free to answer it on the chat, okay? And then, so you have the chat, if you see that on the bottom window, then there's also a Q&A tab. If you hit Q&A, ask a question. I could either type an answer back, or we'll do it live for everybody if we have the time for that. So that's just some quick housekeeping. Try to do that as quick as I can. Anything else you want to add, Dad, before we jump into it?
No, I'm looking at the glare off my head, so I hope I'm not blinding anybody out there. But I got my face in a little bit of a shadow, so I'm going to do everybody out there a favor and try to hide this face as much as I can. But
well,
other than that note, I think we're ready to go.
We lost you for 75% of it last time, so this time, you know, let's while we got that beautiful face on screen, let's roll with it.
Yeah, roll. No, it should be good.
All right.
Good. So, you want to start? Or you want me to?
I want you to start it. Go ahead.
All right. Well, again, thanks again for hanging in there with us, and I hope you find some serious value in the time we're going to share together. So last night we talked a little bit about the coronavirus and just some of the general atmosphere that we're all living and experiencing through, and some of the confusion it really generates. And then, I'm not going to go too much over that again tonight, but I would just kind of preface my thing tonight with we're all in it together. Stay positive. If buying a home is a serious dream you have, then you want to own it. You want to own what it takes to make that dream come to fruition, okay? And I say that with the resources that are available, the education that's available, tools like this that's available. All of this is really designed to be effective for you as a potential consumer, but it only works if you take the time to look for it and utilize it. Right? So you're going to see blogs and HD TV up the wazoo, all good stuff. Again, that's another tool. It's a tool in your mental arsenal in terms of preparing yourself for buying this house. So we won't go too deep into last night. Again, if you have any questions, like Brendan said, hit us with a Q&A, and we'll like to stop and answer some of them. We've been teaching this for a long time. If we have anybody new that wasn't here last night, but for a couple decades, and we're still figuring this out with you. So this is a curveball we've never dealt with. So, in terms of going out and being an effective home searcher / home purchaser in this environment takes a little bit of a different wrinkle than what we've had in the past. But it's nothing that you can't overcome. Really, it's a little more of a screening process that we do in advance, as far as the sellers are going to want you to have masks on, all that kind of stuff, gloves. We got to fill out a certain form we send to them. And then once they approve that, then we can kind of take the next step and get you into a house. Well, before we find you a house, let's start at the beginning. So when you're out looking for an agent, the question you really want to ask yourself is, what are you hoping to find? What kind of agent are you striving to connect with? If you're looking for what's called or considered a so-called buyer's agent or a seller's agent, or somebody who's got a nice little set of letters after their name, I got all these little abbreviation things afterwards. All of that's good. That'll all show you a certain specialty to some degree in a format. For example, if you have someone who is a relocation specialist of some sort, I know they have, what's the CRS? What's that one, Brad? Remember the CRS? I have an FTB as a first-time buyer specialist certification. I don't even put it on my card, because half the time I forget what the heck it even stands for. So
yes, I think you said it. Certified Relocation Specialist sounds
yeah, that's what I thought. So some people really get wrapped up in looking for all these little abbreviations afterward, or these little acronyms or letters. And it's not a bad thing, but you really want to use your referrals if you have them. Your intuition, when that starts raising its head, like, hey, I'm getting a really good vibe off this person. I want to learn more about him. Or, I'm feeling a little bit of pressure here. That might be a sign too. So use a lot of your own instincts when you start picking your agents. But what I tell folks, and when I used to teach on the base, we had a lot of, men and women that were traveling cross country. They'd go to the seminar and say, well, I'm not going to buy it till next year. And my thought was, hey, this is a great time to test out some of these agents. Send them a line, drop them an email. Hey, my name's Jim. I'm going to come to Norfolk in February. I'm still going to start looking for my house. I'll maybe do some house hunting, leave. I'm looking for a good agent. And if the person gives you time of day right off the get-go, that's a great sign. On the other hand, if you get an agent says, hey, give me a call when you get closer to it, well, that's another sign, right? It's a sign you may not want to work with that person. But at some point, you're going to go out and you're going to want to find a realtor. And let's say you found Brandon. You came across Brandon. You liked his style. You liked his energy. You liked the fact that he knew what he was talking about. So he's already got a couple things going for him. And you sit down and you go over, you may have met him at an open house. You're just walking through with your family one day. He's gripping and grinning with you, giving you his card, telling you about the property. Property wasn't really what you're looking for, but you had a good feeling with him, so you took his card. Not a bad thing to do. Brandon will probably do a follow-up and thank you for coming through the open house and maybe get a feel for what you're looking for. Most people today already know what they're looking for, but they may not have put it in full motion, meaning they may not have had a chance to go out and see all the 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,600 square feet in a certain zip code. Every buyer has a certain expectation. And when you start the process, you want to be really clear with your agent what you're truly looking for. Okay, that helps your agent immensely when you start getting ready to write an offer. The agent can't presume anything, and most agents won't. They'll ask you some questions, like what's more important to you? Is the school district more important, or the size of the home, or the price? I mean, they're all going to factor towards the top. But typically, there's one driving aspect of the home search that is kind of key, and usually the price. So let's say the price is already a given. There's usually something after the price where I've got a couple kids, I really need a 3-bedroom. Okay, so Brandon might ask you, are you okay with maybe some older homes? What's older? Well, if you want this area older, most of them were built say like in the early 60s. And, some people consider that older, some consider that newer. If, you're living in certain parts of Ventura or Santa Paula where the homes were built in 1910, right? So 1960 is a whole lot newer than 1910. But for folks who want new, 1960 probably wouldn't cut it. But these are the kind of questions you want to talk to your agent about.
Real quick,
So
Dad?
ideally, yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted, a question came in, but I also wanted to just hit a key point that I know I've heard you talk about in past seminars. Communication is key, right? Communication is the number one thing, not only that your agent has the ability to do, but your communication to your agent in terms of what your needs, what your wants are, what it is that you're looking for, what your expectations are, right? How you want to be communicated to. Do you prefer text during the day because you're at work and you really can't be on the phone and take a phone call, right? Are there particular hours? You want to set all that up front. So the more that you do up front, and we talk about that a lot, it's front loading the conversation, but we set up a time, and it could be a Zoom interview, and we communicate, this is what we're looking for. These are our needs. This is what we want. This is what we think we can afford, but this is what we really want, right? And then we start talking about trade-offs. So I just wanted to hit on some of those points because I heard you kind of touch on it, but I really wanted to emphasize the importance of communication, setting proper expectations. And this is a relationship. It's kind of an awkward thing. You're meeting a complete stranger that you're putting your faith that they truly have your best interests at heart. It's almost like dating in a relationship. You got to find the right fit, somebody who fits your needs. And sometimes some people don't care about all the good feelings, and they just want facts, and they want results, and they want quickness, and they want somebody who's just going to get them straight to what it is they want really quick. Other people want to have coffee with you. They want to hang out. They want to have a drink afterwards, or they want to, have lunch or a meal with you, and they really want to get to know you because this is such an intimate process. So it's truly important that you look for somebody that kind of fits what you're looking for. You do your research. You can check on Zillow. I know my dad gave dre.ca.gov as a website to check them up. Also Google search them. Check to make sure they don't have anything popping up on Google. To be honest with you, if I get some random referral or somebody who reaches out to me, I'll Google search them. I'll look them up on Facebook. I'll kind of get a feel for them, not Facebook stalk them, but just make sure I'm dealing with somebody legitimate, because believe me, we can be fooled just as much as you can be fooled as you're looking in the process. So we really, before we start engaging, before we, there's safety parameters you got to take in place. It hits back on that final point my dad talked about, trust your gut instinct. So I just want to hit some of those points. And is it okay if I share with you this question? Because it's a really good question.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is, I've been watching houses for weeks on Redfin, Trulia, and Zillow. I see that some sell but never appeared on those sites. Is that because they went straight to an agent somehow? I thought all that went to the MLS, which is where I assume the Redfin, Trulia, Zillow sites pulled the information from. And I do want to talk about a May 1st thing after you answer that, Dad.
So you kind of broke up a third of the way through the question, but
okay. So
basically something came up that wasn't on MLS, or?
Basically, properties are popping up on Redfin and they're already in escrow, but they never came on active. So how does that happen? What happens in that situation?
Great question. This is what leads to a lot of frustration for a whole lot of people who are doing online searching. It's gotten a little bit better, but it's been notorious late feeds from the MLS on Redfin, HomeSnap, Realtor.com's gotten a little bit better about it. Trulia. Some folks don't realize Trulia actually owns,
Zillow.
Trulia owned Redfin?
Zillow owns Trulia.
Zillow owns Trulia, that's what it was. Zillow bought out Trulia a while ago because they knew some people didn't like Zillow, but they started seeing similar things pop up on Trulia while it was owned by the same company. Different algorithm to give a little bit different spin, but you're getting the same information. The sad truth is the folks who get locked in on that sometimes miss opportunities because they'll see a property that they just kind of fall in love with. The property may already be gone. Meanwhile, your agent's doing some research on some other properties, might have another comparable home for you to look at, but we get fixated on this one because it hits all the checks, right? And I've seen this happen many times where by the time I finally get my person to realize these are all gone, and one I really wanted to show them, now I got to get them to emotionally kind of swing over to this new property that I'm presenting them. So one of the first things that when you start this initial process, these are all, again, they're all tools to use, but I wouldn't overutilize them as far as making them my go-to decisions with a, Trulia or a Zillow or whatever. They're good resources, but your best resource is going to be your agent in the MLS. So hopefully you got a nice established relationship where you feel comfortable sending a text. Most of the agents keep our phones on for pretty good most of the day. If we get to a spot where we just had a long day, we may turn the phone off at 8 or 9 o'clock, but I'm going to shake my head. That rarely happens. So if you want to send a text of a listing of an address, hey, can you check this out for me? But please understand, as a buyer, if your agent is active, you may have already put it on some type of an automatic distribution list, so you already got them fed to you, or you may have his or her website lined up, which is a direct feed right off the MLS. You can go into that way. But what you really want to have is trust that your agent's giving you the information when it's on time. So that way you're not going around and getting conflicting information that just frustrates everybody. So it's real important you realize it's out there, but I just wouldn't overplay that hand. I'd really build on my agent's resource that they're going to provide me.
Awesome. Can I build on that real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm sorry that it was cutting up a little bit as I was trying to read it. I think I misread a couple of the words on it. So the gist of it, so there's two main points to bring up on that question. One is you're seeing properties that are already going into escrow before they ever even hit the MLS. So what that's considered is a pocket listing, right? And just so you know, the state of California is regulating very hard against that. And what that means is certain properties will be advertised prior to they actually hit the MLS. Well, as of May 1st, it's supposed to be strongly enforced that every property that you advertise, if I go by and I hear about a property I have coming up in about a month from now, right? And my seller's getting ready to fix it up and do things. I can't snap a picture of it and put it on social media now and say, hey, I got a listing coming up, unless I plan to put it on the MLS 24 hours later. And that's supposed to create true competition, true market competition, which is actually the best for the sellers, right? And the reason for that is because when you have an active market, now you have buyers competing against each other, and the seller truly will make sure that they cast out the biggest net and source of buyers to come in. That's where commissions come into play. Commissions is something that a lot of agents don't like to talk about. I have no problem talking about commissions because I understand the value in them. I understand that commissions help generate the activity and the action on the agent that's going to work with a buyer sometimes for years. My dad mentioned the other day, he worked with the buyer for 4 years. That's 4 years in terms of preparation, of guidance, of counseling, of coaching, of passing on bad opportunities that didn't work for them because that agent wasn't just there to make a paycheck and was truly looking out for that client's best interest to put them in the best situation possible. And when you work with a true professional, it is all about your best interest. And that's what they're going to do. And this is, again, going to be one of the most important decisions that you make typically in your life. And it could make or break, your success. And I don't mean to say it in a scary way, but you can't work with an amateur in this type of situation. There's just too much that's at stake, right? And a lot of times we try to do favors. It's like, oh, they're nice, I'm going to help them try to do their first deal. I remember my dad having a story in Maryland with a gentleman that my dad knew that he didn't sell a lot of business, and he wanted to help him out, and he wanted to try to do him a favor, and unfortunately it didn't work out. Well, now knowing what we know now, there's just too much at stake. So you got to work with a professional. And then that competition creates the best opportunity for the seller. Now, this is a home buyer workshop, not a home seller workshop. So the reason why I'm sharing that with you is you should see less of that pocket listing stuff, and more of it should go out on the MLS, which gives you a fair shot if you're ready to go and you're working with an agent and they're keeping you set up on the systems that my dad was talking about. So they have your search criteria set up. Now you're getting real-time information. Nothing against Zillow, Redfin, and these others, but it's not always accurate because you got to remember, what are they in this for, right? They make money off of selling advertisement to agents. Agents pay money to generate leads off of you clicking on a listing that, oh, I'm interested in that property. It just hit the market. I want to see it. I want to check it out. So I got to hit one of these agents on the side. Well, one of them is the true listing agent. The other 3 or 4 are advertisers, right? People who are paying for advertisement to try to get your phone call, which they're not even associated to the listing. So it's so backwards in so many different ways. But when you know how the game is played, you can put yourself in position to win. And to put yourself in position to win, you want to work with a professional, get set up properly, right? So I want to emphasize that because you should see less of that. But there are agents who have a lot of listings and listings that are coming up that they can connect the dots and kind of give you an edge ahead of time. And so there is an advantage to that. But you will also hear agents fishing as well and say, hey, I'll let you know about these properties before they hit the market. Well, find out that they truly have something that is coming up, right? And not just trying to get your information. So again, you got to go with trust. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. But this is about being real and being straight up. So we want to tell you the truth of the situation. So I know that was a lot on that one question. Dad, do you want to jump into, we were going to do an offer scenario. Do you want to role play that? And then we'll go into the timeline.
Yeah, but I just a couple more quick things before we get to that part.
No problem.
Real fast. I've had many people over the years ask me a couple specific questions. One about for sale by owners, they're now called FSBOs,
right? And
another one about calling the sign on the property, which kind of similar in some ways, but it's got different ramifications. So starting with the FSBO. So if you see a for sale by owner, there's a couple things you really want to consider. The first thing is the fact that the person is selling the home by themselves isn't necessarily a negative. You may have someone who may be a previous licensed salesperson. Probably not, but I have seen that happen. More than likely, you have someone who's just thrifting or trying to save on paying commissions. So one of the scenarios we do in the seminar is we talk about, okay, we'll have 2 houses. Excuse me. We'll have 2 houses, one block away, same house. The first house A is selling for $500,000 and goes into escrow on day 1 with an agent. Let's say it's Remax, good company. I used to work for them. Nothing bad here. Let's say I got a Remax agent over there, and this person who's a block away does all of his research. See, this house is selling for $500,000, and thinks my house is just as nice as that. I'm gonna put it on it. Well, I'll go $499, $999, basically $500,000. So when you first, one of your initial questions should be, what's the better value? And when you think about it, couple things should just pop right out. And this isn't the bigger concern. I'm going to say the bigger concern for the second part of the scenario. So the obvious real answer, the better value, is the one that's at 500. If both houses are the same home, model match, all the same kind of stuff in it, and one's got a $500K price tag and they're in escrow, and the other one just listed at basically 500, is trying to go in escrow, and he probably will fairly soon. The primary reason the first one's a better value is if the true price of that house is already taken in and factored a commission of probably 5%. So the 5%, which is kind of a standard, which can be negotiable by law, they can't be fixed or set. They're always negotiated when the listing is taken. But the general rule, most agents are charging 5 when they take the contract. So the $500,000 listing with an agent, and you're paying 25 in commission, so kind of the value of the house is really 475, right? So here's a guy with an agent who's truly charging 475 plus the commission, so it's 500. The other guy's charging you 500 without an agent, so he's already 25 over. One of the common things a lot of FSBOs do is, you know, they may drop it a tad, but they never drop it down where it should be at that 475. So let's say hypothetically this guy put it at 475 and you're at 5. Now which one's the better value? That's a little bit deeper question. Price-wise, the 475 might save you a couple of bucks. That's not my concern, is the 475. My concern is going to be the insurance that we're going to talk that person doesn't have, okay? So let's say I have a buyer and he comes to me and he wants to, he goes, hey, Jim, there's a house on Main Street. It's for sale by owner. You want to help me out? Sure, not a problem. Let me get the address. I do my research. I call that house because they're advertising all over the place. Probably Zillow, one of the first places I'll look, but I'll find them. And I'll call Mr. Jones at that first house and I'll say something. Hey, I see you got a lovely home for sale. Congratulations. Can I ask you just a real quick question? Sure. Will you cooperate with me? Are you a licensed agent? Yeah. I've had people say, well, send me a copy of your card and we'll talk. That has happened. Most of them will just say, yeah, I'll offer X. Usually X isn't 2.5, but it's usually 2% to 2.5, somewhere around there. So if you ask them, they're willing to pay that out to the agent to bring them a buyer. Some don't. Some just say, I'm not going to cooperate. I get that probably about 30% of the time, right? If they say they'll cooperate, then I say, okay, you know, I'll do a little more research on your property. I haven't checked comps yet, but let me get back with you. Then I go back to my buyer and I tell them, I say, yeah, we can write an offer on that house. Here's where, you know, it's a little stickier for that particular situation is, first of all, that seller may not know the proper value to his house. Secondly, that seller may not have gotten all the proper disclosures he's going to tell you about the house. Thirdly, I know for a fact he doesn't have errors and omissions insurance because your typical standard coverage on a FSBO is not going to cover that. So he's not insured if something goes wrong. What he's counting on is your agent's insurance, if he's even aware of it. A lot of times they're not even aware of the insurance even factors in. This is how, when I use the word ignorant, I'm not being mean. This just means uninformed. But this is how ignorant some of the for sale by owners are. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, okay? So for sale by owners, and I've done, I did 2 already this year. So for sale by owners are very doable, but there's certain things have to fall in line. Is it priced right? You know, does the person have his proper ducks in a row? Has he got all his disclosures? All these things factor in. So that, you know, I don't want to beat up for sale by owner because we can talk for half an hour on that stuff. But that's definitely one you want to be aware of. Do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I actually got a question on Facebook, so I'm not watching another movie over here. Just
okay, no, go ahead. What's the question?
I know you see my eyes floating up. No, we got a question on Facebook, which is pretty cool. So I got the live questions here. Again, keep the questions coming. If
keep them
anything
coming.
that you guys have that you want answered live, we will do that. And again, we're gonna get into the timeline, which we're hitting 5:34, so we should start on it pretty soon, just to make sure we hit some of those key points. But the question is, what side effects do you see coming out of this whole pandemic? And do you see it being a seller's market in the near future, or will it be a buyer's market? We touched on it yesterday.
Great
question. That's the question.
And you know what? That is the question. That's the question that's going to drive all the activity, or it's going to stop the activity. So what I would offer, it's my opinion, doesn't mean a whole lot, but I think there's some substance to, you know, what I'm going to bring up is, again, we go back to, first of all, our environment. Our environment is desirable. If we were in the backwoods of somewhere in the and I'm from the Midwest, so I can say this with all love. But if we were in the backwoods somewhere in a certain state back east and things aren't happening as far as a lot of desirability, I might be a little more concerned. But in Southern California, Ventura County, people want to live here. So that's our first factor, desirability. Second factor is the way the industry works between having agents who are licensed, who are paying fees and dues, having lenders who are counting on these mortgages. Hi, buddy. Having lenders who are counting on us, having title, having escrow, having home inspectors, having all the other contractors, having everything tied into this. There's a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy that's going to be doing everything they can to keep this machine going. The biggest concern is going to be just consumer confidence, period, right? That's the biggest factor. Homes are bought and sold during consumer confidence as far as with an upward slope. Now, if consumer confidence fails, homes might pick up, but it's typically for the wrong reason. And then it's our sellers going to sell to get out of town quick, which will create a glutton of inventory, or our seller's going to ride it out till the dip flattens out and starts ascending again. And that's what we think is going to happen here. You'll see a slight dip. We're not going to see a correction like 08 because it's a whole different environment of what happened in 08 versus what's happening now. We still have a supply and demand factor. Supply is still low. Inventory is thin, right? We have a limitation on growth, new building. We have the desirability factor. People want to have it. We have the industry that's in place that's ready to go to work. DRE and the governor and everyone else has already given us some latitude with, okay, it immediately couldn't do anything. Well, now we got a disclosure we can fill out. We can get you in to see the homes. It's not just virtual anymore. So we're slowly getting back into that. And the quicker we get back into actually holding homes open, which will probably happen in the near month or so with some kind of, regulatory oversight as far as what you can and can't do. But when that starts opening up, that's going to generate the mechanism again, and we're going to start going. I think we opened escrow on two properties today. So things are happening. People are buying. Buyers are still out there getting good deals. And what's interesting is the buyers who are actively aggressive right now, and for some folks who are kind of passive because they're not sure what to do, these buyers got an advantage. They're not competing against 9 offers. They might compete against 3 offers. There's still multiple offers, but there's just not a whole family of them. But as far as the expectation, well, all I can tell you is I think there will be a little bit of a dip, but I think we're going to ascend to a relatively, decent rate where we get our, 4 to 7, 8, 9% a year growth, which is very healthy. We don't need the 25% growth we had in 2005, which wasn't sustainable. The year before there was about 14%. That wasn't sustainable. Before that, it was about 4 or 5. That's what we need. Inflation's hovering 2 to 3%. If we can keep our growth 2, 3, 4, 5%, that's awesome. If you can get up 6, 7, 8%, that's icing on the cake. So I think we're going to hover somewhere there. And the last thing I'll say is I see reports that do this. I see reports that point the market this way. I see reports that market that way. So with that, it's like all I can do is go off the things I've listed to you: desirability, supply and demand, the industry standards, what we're doing, all the corrective actions that are already in place. That's how I see what the market's going to do. And I feel very confident taking my buyers out. And when I talk to them, it's like, if you see a dip, you're okay. We're not going to pull an 08. There's too many things involved that are in place. Dodd-Frank cleaned up all the, the non-regulated lending that was going on out there. And that stuff's behind us. Lenders are doing a great job screening their applicants, which we really needed. But see, you couldn't have some lenders screening applicants back then, the rest of them giving you freaking no loan doc loans. It put all of their good lenders at risk because they couldn't keep up with these guys. Now across the board, it should be all the lenders are doing their background checks, VOE, verification of employment, sometimes 1, 2, maybe 3 times during an escrow or whatever. They're staying on top of it. So If you're in the mind where you're going to buy and you've paid your dues, you've sacrificed, you've saved your pennies, you've got your debt under control. Now you're hooking up with the right people. And we're going to do a scenario here in about 30 seconds. You're hooking up with the right people. You found a home. You want to leap into that pool of home ownership. It's a great time to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, great answer. And we got some other good questions coming, but we got to keep it moving. It's 5:40 now. So let's jump into do you want to do the offer and acceptance, or do you want to do the timeline? Because the timeline's going to be
well, let's do the offer first, because then the timeline will make more sense after we get going.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say Brandon's listed a house. He's got his house on Main Street. I've got myself a client who have already had pre-approved, and that's going to be one of the first things that you're going to want to do when you get to this level, is you already have to have that funding basically set. Your pre-approval should be good to go, with the exception of a rate lock, because they really can't lock it till we, get ourselves a nice property identified and get it in escrow. But your lender can give you a pretty good range with an understanding of where the fluctuations might fluctuate up or a little bit down. So if right now today's rate is 3.125 or whatever, and you're looking around and you haven't done anything major, you haven't bought any new boats or all that kind of stuff, you're probably going to hover in there, a little over, a little lower when you finally get into lock. So when you get your pre-approval, the thing I would focus on is, am I good to go? I've given you all my documents. You've done your thing on the lending side, and the lender come back and says, yeah, Mr. Jones, hey, we got you good for $600,000. And right now, if we can find something relatively quick, we're going to lock you in at a really good rate. But go out and find a property. I'll have your pre-approval ready to go to your agent when you find the house you want to write the offer on. So you got that. That's kind of your get ready. On your mark, get set, go. That's kind of on your mark right there, right? So I got my pre-approval. I got my realtor. So I meet somebody I've been working with, and they say, hey, we want to go look at some houses. I got a list of 5 houses, but I really want to see this one on Main Street. So we see all the houses. We get to Main Street. They fall in love with Main Street. The wife tells the husband which one they're going to buy, and that's usually how it goes. So the wife picks Main Street. And we come back and we sit down and we pull some comps. The comps are the comparable sales, hopefully a model match. It isn't hard to find a model match a lot of times with some of the older tract homes, because they flip the same floor plan all through these neighborhoods. So the one on Main Street was a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath. My clients qualified for $600. This one's running at $550. Been on the market for 2 days. So I'm sitting down with my client. Now, if I did my job, as I'm driving around the cars with, showing these properties, and my wife's the best agent I've ever worked with, and her and I would tag team this. And when we get out of the car, it's like, hey, she really likes the one on Main Street. We may call the agent right there on the spot. Good chance I called them ahead of time to see if these things are still available before I show them, right? If I had time, we've already done that ahead of time, because you got to set the appointments usually. Let's say this one was vacant. I might send a text. Do you have any offers on these 5 houses? Depending on what the other ones had. The one on Main Street, no offers yet. A lot of interest. All these homes are always hot properties, have a lot of interest. That's what the lister's always telling you, trying to bump you up, right? So we come out of there. Mrs. Jones loves that one on Main Street. I call Brandon. Now I actually call him and say, hey, I think we might put something together since we've talked. Any offers? He says, no, but I got a lot of hot buyers that are, I showed it 6 times today, which is pretty standard. Actually, it's happening a lot. So we go back, we pull our comps, 550. Looks like it's probably fairly well priced. In fact, he might even have a little bit low. It's like, and this just happened on one we looked at today. And so the client goes, why is that price low? And this is a tactic that more and more agents do. They want bidding wars. They want multiple offers coming at them. And they might price it here knowing they're going to sell it here. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. But let's just say Brandon Ramey's got his price pretty right. So I come back to my client and say, you qualified at 6. This one's 550. What do you feel good offering? And then it really boils down to, we used to call it, is it your gotta have house? Is this your gotta have house? Well, what do you mean by that? I mean, if you don't get this house, excuse me, is it going to, really bother you? Well, we'd really like to have it. Okay, well, then let's go forward with, do you feel okay writing what offer? Because let's put it together now. Right now, he says he has no offers on the table. And well, we talked him over, we're going to go full price. Okay, full price. Do you need any closing cost help? I should already know this, but I'm asking just to reaffirm it. Well, we would like some closing cost help, but should we do that? When they start asking for our advice, all I can tell them is, as of now, there's no other offers. If you're giving them full price, if it's a VA, some of my VA folks need some extra help. Sometimes we may kick in. Hey, let's ask them for $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 closing cost. If they don't need it, we try to stay away from it if it's their gotta have house, because I'm trying to give the other side less to counter back with, right? I'm trying not to give them that. But if they truly need it, then we might ask for that closing cost help. Excuse me. So let's say this person just says, you know what, we're good to go. Let's just give them full price, see what happens. So we send that offer out there. While we send it, I get a text from Brandon and say, hey, you know what, I just got another offer in. So Brandon got a second offer. Now I'm going to turn over to him in just a second, but now I'm already going to prep my clients. There's a 3-day standard default time. When you submit an offer, there's a 3-day window to respond. It's usually 5 o'clock on the third day. Now I have done this where I've written great offers and I've told the listing agent, you got 3 hours. It's like, what? I've done this several times where it's like, no, I'm giving you what you ask. I'm bringing you a solid buyer. It's 5 o'clock. You got till 8 o'clock to accept this or it's off the table. Well, they start huffing and puffing. It's like, hey, here it is. Do what you got to do. Now, I've done that several times. So far, knock on wood, it hasn't bit me. But now that I'm talking about it, I'm sure the next guy does, it's going to bite us right in the butt.
You're on, Dad, you're on Facebook Live. So every agent that's watching this right now knows,
well, some of them may have been the recipient. Some of them may have been the recipient of this. But that's really during a certain market. Now, in this market right now, if I give somebody 3 hours, they're going to say, yeah, right, old man. You know, you do your 3 hours and I'll pick one of these other 7 offers. Right. So there's a time and a place for that, right? But those are things that you can do. So when you get ready to present your offer, if you know what kind of market you're dealing with, it's going to have a huge impact on how you're going to submit it and how it's going to be received. Now, so we got a multiple offer situation. I'm going to prep them for hopefully a counter offer. Since we gave them full price, we should get a counter. It's not guaranteed. Keep in mind, if you would, as a buyer, sellers have 3 options. You submit an offer, they got 3 options. A, they can accept it outright. B, they can reject it outright. Or C, they can counter. I'm going to be straight up with you. I would say at least 90% of the time, even if you give them full price, you still get a counter back. It's rare that every term that you put down there, they agree to. It may not be the price. It could be the time frame. Hey, we need a 45-day escrow. Sellers, nah, we only want 30 days. Or it could be, we're asking COE plus, possession on close. COE is close of escrow. We want it the day it closes. Seller might say, no, I need COE plus 2. So we're going to close. I need 2 extra days to get my stuff out. Or it could be the title company or escrow company or the amount on the warranty. It could be one of 100 things, but they're probably going to counter back, even with a full price offer. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and I'm going to let Brandon take it right here. We're going to get a multiple counter back. Multiple counter means more than 1. Doesn't mean 2, it doesn't mean 20. It means more than 1. If we get a multiple counter offer back, now the game's changed a little bit. Just in the sense, I have somebody, well, before I give it to you, if it's one offer, one person, and we send it off, and they send us a counter, to get that house, I tell my clients, hey, if you accept that counter, that house is yours. Mm-hmm. That's all you got to do. There's one offer before everybody else piles in, and they're coming. I know Brandon, he wouldn't lie to me. They're coming. We got one offer back, and he says, hey, something might be coming in. Hey, we're going to accept it, and we're going to let you know we accept it. We're going to confirm that we accept it. So we got a contract. So don't be pulling any shady stuff after we accept this, right? That's the beauty of one offer back and forth. Other scenario, you throw in at least 2, 3, 4, or 5 offers, different story. So he can send a multiple counter, it'll be checked. We can accept it. Doesn't mean we get the house, right? let's say it's up 5 offers. 4 of them accept. Who gets the house? I'm going to turn over to Brand, let him take it from there.
Okay.
But right now, for my buyers, we didn't accept it quick enough. You got 3 more offers. So let's say you got 3 or 4, whatever you want to work with. I'll let you take it from here.
All right. So what I love about this part of what my dad's emphasizing is the difference between a single and a multiple counteroffer is it's all about understanding what power you have in negotiating. And when somebody sends you when you send an offer to a seller, which is what originally happened, that buyer is giving the seller the power. This is all contracts, right? We're not giving legal advice. This is how it works though. When a buyer gives the seller the power to bind them to those terms based on the offer that was originally sent. Now, if a seller doesn't like it and wants to send a counter back, they take away that power. They're rejecting that power and now sending new terms back to the buyer on what they're willing to be bound to, right? So now the power is transferred, and now that seller has given that buyer the power to be bound. And when they're bound, and we talked about this yesterday, but we will get into it when we talk about the timeline, is the beauty of the contract. So once that seller accepts your offer, they're locked. If they get another better offer afterwards, the best they can do is take it as backup offer. So that's very key to understand. So when you want to understand the game of real estate and how to play the game, you want to know that there's multiple parts of negotiation. But number one is you got to first secure yourself the property. And ideally, if you do it in the best way possible, there is no other backup offers. There is no other counter offers. There's not a multiple. It's a single counter offer. And now it's a more level playing field in terms of negotiations through repairs and everything else. But the second it goes multiple, this is my seller and this is my buyer, and now it's multiple counter offer. Now I got an over asking price. Now I got as is sale. Now I got, hey, even if the appraisal comes in short, you're going to cover the difference, right? You see how the power is shifting. So that happens the longer we take. And that's why my dad talked about shortening the expiration, because we want to shorten that window. We want to shorten that competition if we can position ourselves. So getting back to the original question, because I just really wanted to emphasize that point. The original question was, what happens now that it's a multiple counteroffer? The form looks different. So you have SMCO, seller multiple counteroffer, and then you have SCO, seller counteroffer. Seller counteroffer has the seller signature and then a buyer signature. The second that buyer signs it and sends it back, that seller's locked in. We secured the property. It's my house to lose now. As long as everything goes the way it's supposed to happen, which is likely to happen, this is my house and I can feel pretty good about it. Now, if it's a multiple counter, seller sends the multiple counter, sends it to 2 or 3 different parties or 7 different parties, right? And it gets accepted by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But number 7 gets it in first, then 3 gets it in second, then 2 gets it in third, then 4th, he's thinking about it, but then he eventually accepts it. Then number 5 is like, you know what? I don't like this counter. I'm going to counter it back, right? So he sends his own counter. So these are all the different scenarios. Who gets the house? Is it based on who signed it first? There's a third box. That third box gives that seller that final decision. That means I can send counter, 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 and still wait. And guess what happens tomorrow? Another offer comes in. And now it all depends on whether these terms are held confidential or not. Now, a lot of times when I know the way my parents have taught me in the business, we will keep terms confidential because we have that agreement with our seller to not disclose the power of the other offers, as well as we work on the buying end many times, sometimes more times than on the listing side. And we've had our offers leveraged against us, and we don't like that, right? If somebody comes correct and submits a great offer and it meets all the requirements and my seller's happy and they're going to net as much as they need to, guess what? It's probably priced well. It's probably going to appraise. We're probably going to have a nice, happy transaction all the way through it. Now, when these games start happening, other factors start setting in. Now people start feeling like they got kind of jaded, and yeah, they had to jump up and they got it at that price, but they feel they paid an extra 15, 20, 30,000 for it. Now the appraisal comes in low, but I got to come out of pocket that difference, right? It's not the same feeling. So you got to think about that. And on the selling and the buying side, and I'm sharing it because I know I got some investors that are also on here that have properties and are thinking about buying and selling and doing some of that. So all key things to keep in mind. So getting back to the original question, the original point, I hope that was helpful, is that seller who sends that multiple has all the power and can continue just accepting and waiting. There is a 3-hour or 3-day expiration, but technically, are you going to tell a seller that has 7 offers, hey, hurry up and shorten that expiration now? Probably not. You're probably not going to get very far with it unless you got a lot of money down or you're all cash. Maybe I'll pay a little bit more attention to you. If you don't, you kind of got to play the game and just pray and hope for the best. And then we can also talk about, if you like that, some of the things, and we may do it on a future session, what we do to help put it on a personal level to also, it's not always the highest offer that gets accepted, right? Any other points to make? I know I went on quite a bit for that one opening.
No, that's good stuff. You know, there's so many different personalities involved in submitting offers and receiving offers. I think from the industry side, what we hope is that we just get a fair shot, right? We're hoping it's not being pocket listed in and somebody's just trying to double end it. Or I remember there was an agent, I won't name a name, I had the hardest time for many years because I'm trying to present an offer. This back when we used to write them out, triplicate or whatever. And we had a good offer. In fact, it was full price. And she kept telling me, well, they're out of town. In fact, now they're out of state. They're in Vegas. I thought, well, you sound like your story just changed a little while ago. So I drove up to the house, knocked on the door, and they answered the door. It's like, I thought you're out of state. Why would we be out of state? Who are you? I said, okay, well, I'm trying to present an offer, and then they closed the door on me. It's like, okay. Point being is that agent wasn't even being honest with me. And the agent's still doing business, and I hope that she's gotten better about that. That's kind of rare, but sometimes I think with fairly high commissions out there, and again, I don't want this to be an indictment on the industry, but as a buyer, it can affect you. Fairly high commissions can create anxiety and sometimes some misappropriation of how things done. We have to take ethics training, and which I don't understand, but it gives you an idea of how complex this can be when you have big commissions, you have big properties being transferred back and forth, you have large amounts of responsibility, disclosure, inspection. All of this process is pretty overwhelming if you don't have a good plan and you don't understand the concepts of how to go forward and be effective if you're pricing out a purchase, if you're trying to be the purchaser. You want to know some of this, and we don't share a lot of this with our buyers because it really doesn't do you any good to wonder if this agent is going to receive your offer. That's our job. I just shared it with you because some things have happened in the past that make you a little bit jaded when you do this. So I don't want to write an offer and go in there and think, well, this agent's not going to give me fair representation. I have to presume that he or she is. And 99 times out of 100, it's straight up. So I probably shouldn't even mention that. Just I don't know why it popped into my head. The one thing that when we do get to an offer / counter offer part of the process, if you've done your homework, and last night I mentioned about the bio, if you can present yourself in a personal fashion, if you can have the bio, and I know I see a lot more agents on my listings, and it always warms my heart that I see people who are taking more of a personal approach to it. Makes my seller's jobs harder, right, when I'm on the selling side. Because now I see the family here. They're not just a name, black and white on a contract. I see the personalities. I see the story and how compelling they may have missed many other properties in the past. And your heart goes for them. At the end of the day, it's my client who's going to make that decision. When Brandon has 4 offers, he's going to pick at some point. It may not be the highest price. He's going to pick the strongest candidate, the strongest offer. His highest price out of those 4 offers may be 5,000 or 10,000 higher, still within your appraised value because he's got it priced well. But that person might have to sell a small condo over here at the bay someplace or whatever, right? So that even though it's 5,000 higher, it's riskier. So when you have 4 to compare, it's not always apples to apples, right? It could be apples to oranges. So Brandon's job and his seller's job is to screen through them and find the one that's best suited to complete the transaction, which is going to net the seller the highest. My job as a buyer's agent is to put my person in position. This is our gotta have house. Let's give it your best shot. Let's not lose it trying to negotiate $1,000. One last story. One of the worst stories I have, I was brand new in the business. And one of my friends, we were chiefs together in the command. I went out helping him find the house. I still remember the price. I remember the street. So we find this beautiful home listed at 340. It's 4 bedrooms, 1,700 square feet, beautiful pool, waterfall, putting green, built-in barbecue, nice new roof. House is immaculate, 340. It tells you how long ago this has been, on a cul-de-sac. So he comes in, I'm going 290. It's like, oh, okay, here we go. So I get a call back from the agent. He goes, 290, huh? He goes, I see you're military and I'm a veteran, so I'm gonna cut you some slack. I'm gonna give you my bottom line price. It's 311. I'm on my way to the airport. I'm flying back to Minnesota for Thanksgiving. I called my guy, said, hey, they dropped it to 311. I don't know where that number came from, but the part I'll never forget was, you're never gonna imagine what my guy did. I would have respected more if he'd have stayed at 290. He comes up to 310. 310. I should have wrote a check for the $1,000, but I knew I want that $1,000. I don't give it up. So while we're doing this, guess what happens? Offer comes out of left field. I get a call after he lands in Minnesota, says, hey, forget about it. We accept one. I said, can I ask you what you got? He goes, 325. Because it was still listed at 340. So he was happy that my guy did this for $1,000 because his client made an extra $14,000 while we're going back and forth for $1,000. So my lesson there was, I need to be better in informing my client. And then the last piece to this puzzle, it's a really sad story. This was before Thanksgiving, right? So he doesn't get a house in November, December, January, February, March, April. We're up at Mammoth for Easter. I get a call. He's working with another agent now. Maybe he fired me because I didn't protect him. I won't name the agent. And he found a house. He spent $335. He got a 3-bedroom with a pool, needed a roof, wasn't on a cul-de-sac, and it was about 1,400 square feet. He spent $335. So that $1,000, at my estimation, cost him about 75 grand in value. The moral to that is, if this is your gotta have house, if you see a house that, yeah, I can see my family in this, don't do this. Give them this, right? Give them that, or stay where you're at because, hey, that's the price I got. I don't have a problem with that. But we don't want to do this. If that person came down and if you have the luxury of negotiating like that in this market, first of all, you're really fortunate because that a lot of this isn't happening. They're putting prices out there. We're giving it our best shot. A lot of times full price, and we're not even coming in first or second place. You can give a full price offer right now and come in third place. That's the kind of craziness that can be going on when the inventory does this. And buyers are ready. They've been doing their homework. You know, they got their lenders ready to go. You know, it really comes down to, and last night for those of you there, man, we don't focus on that price. We focus on that payment. So again, if you're already prepped for a payment of, well, you're at 550, Brandon, probably his house might sell at 560. Hey, Mr. Lender, I found a good house. My payment's at 550. If I lock in today, I go 560. How much more does my payment go up? 10,000 and maybe $40, 45, $50. Cool. Write the offer at 560. Give it my best shot. Wrap it up, or at least put the pressure on the old folks I'm countering with to come up to that. But hopefully you kind of see where I'm going at with this. There's different things you can go forward with, but most of it is this the house for me? And give it my best shot. If I don't get it, hey, I can walk away. I go find the next one or the next one. That's a different story. We're talking about homes that I got to have this house. It's my school for my kids. Everything fits. Don't lose it for a couple of bucks. Okay, back to you, but I'm not sure where we left off at.
That's a great point. No, there's a few questions that have come in, but I want to table some of those, even though I like the engagement. Please keep the questions coming in. I promise you, we're going to answer every single one of the questions that I've seen. I got one on Facebook and one here. Let's jump into the timeline. It's already hit 6 o'clock. If you guys have to go, we understand this is going to be recorded, so we will share it with you. If you like what you're hearing, we're still having, to be honest, we haven't even hit the meat of it. The meat of it's just about to happen with this timeline. So I created a timeline. I'm going to share that right now, Dad, if you're good with that.
Yeah.
And let's jump into that. Can you see the timeline there?
Yeah. Okay,
perfect. You ready to start jumping into that just so we can start explaining how this works? So you and I come to an agreement. I'm the seller. I pick your offer. You wrote a great offer. One of the questions came up about putting your best foot forward, you know, and writing your best number, not trying to come in a little bit lower and then hoping to come up, especially in a multiple counter situation. But it all comes down to, again, that question, is this the guy to have house? If it's the guy to have house, sometimes, as my dad just said, you could write a full price offer. You don't even get a counter. I know of a situation right before the stay-at-home order where it was actually an agent for our company wrote an offer 10 over asking price and didn't even get a counter back. And they were solid buyers. Luckily, we were able to help her out with another property about a week later that we had of a listing that we knew was coming up. So she got her foot in the door early and was able to lock that up and then close that transaction that went out. Go ahead.
Brandon, yep. Brandon, if we could, let's go ahead and pick an offer and then we'll open escrow.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. So
okay.
we took your offer, so we opened escrow.
I'm happy.
Yep. So nice job with that. So so you see the timeline here. We accepted your offer, and now we open escrow. And again, it was a multiple offer, so don't try anything funny, Dad. Don't ask for any crazy repairs. Let's talk about this. What is it by an as-is sale, right? The purchase agreement says it's an as-is sale. What has to be fixed by a seller by law prior to close of escrow?
Okay, so as is a really common term that can be confusing to a lot of people. Most agents are working under the assumption of as is really is telling from the seller to the buyer, hey, be gentle because we're not going to put a lot of money into this. We're already at the bottom of our net, and let's get through the inspections. If you got a big ticket item, we'll talk about it, but just don't come at us with a lot of small things to fix because we're not going to do it. So it doesn't mean that the house will come over exactly as is. It means they're not going to do a lot. By law, when you look at what do they have to do, a lot of it's driven countywide. The government retrofits here currently right now, basically the sellers only have to do a couple things. They have to have the water heater in and strapped and mounted and braced and vented, all that within California earthquake standards, right? That's one. They have to have their carbon monoxide detectors and their smoke detectors properly installed, right? That's two. Other than that, I can't think of a whole lot here. Now they have, and this one gets kind of ambiguous with a lot of folks. They have the low flow water conservation requirement, but it's not a point of sale contention yet. And that confuses a lot of people. So by law, sellers are supposed to have these water saving fixtures in, and they have to disclose the fact that they have put them in or not. So, and it says on there, and I think they're afraid of the ramification or the kickback or the blowback if they mandate everybody have this done like now. So what you're telling the buyer is, one of your disclosures, which we're going to talk about in a second, is, yeah, we understand this is a requirement. We do not have it in yet. So you're going to accept this house without, the shower heads or the toilets or the sinks or whatever flowing the way they're supposed to. But it is a requirement. But real quick on the government retrofit, if you go over the county line to LA County, they have to have the water heater, they have to have the smoke detectors, but they also have to have tempered glass for your sliding patio doors. It's got to be stamped and approved in accordance with the OSHA safety standards. It's got to have emergency gas shutoff connection for your gas line outside. We don't have to have that in Ventura County. And it has to have the low flow stuff have to be installed. So you look at just the different county-wise, just going up the hill, and I don't know what Santa Barbara's is. I haven't sold a house there in a while, but you can see there's different things just between different municipalities. If you're selling a house in Fillmore, and we talked about Ventura last night, you're going to do a sewer lateral inspection. So what we're going to do is we got an as-is sale, and we accepted that. So once we say, okay, hey, Brandon, thank you, we're going to open escrow, we picked a company, we have 3 days to get our EMD, which is our earnest money, over into escrow, okay? That doesn't mean anything that it's going to the seller. All it means is this seller is going to take their house off the market and miss other potential buyers because you took your hard-earned money and you put it into the escrow account. It's a good faith gesture, and you got to do that by day 3. You want to keep going?
Yeah. No, that's
okay.
Good.
So what we do, so on my side as a buyer, and again, my wife's very good about this. The second we have Brandon say, hey, congratulations, depending on the time of night, one of the first things we do is we call our clients, we talk about it. We're very congratulatory. We say, hey, do you have a physical inspector in mind? No, can you give us a list of them? So we'll give them 3 or 4 inspectors to choose from, and we can even give them sample reports. But what we want to do is order that inspection as soon as possible. So we call the inspection company. A lot of times we'll have them on the line. We'll have another line with our client, say, hey, do you have an appointment? Let's say we open escrow. A lot of escrows just tend to happen on Monday because a lot of negotiations and things happen over the weekend. So let's say we open escrow Monday. Monday afternoon, we're already calling the inspection company to say, hey, when's your soonest availability? We have one for Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Other phone, I'm talking to my client. Can you be there at 2 o'clock on Wednesday? Sure, we can be there. Cool. $450. Yeah, we'll be there Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Bam. Now we got our inspection set for 2 o'clock on Wednesday. So that's our first real thing that we have to do. We got to start these inspections. Now, as we go forward, you can see the seller's got basically 7 days to give us all their disclosures and full reports. And we spoke a little bit about this last night. Sometimes if the seller may not have had access to the full house to do a termite. A lot of times we see termite reports that have to come out and revisit because when the listing process started, they either had a partial inspection done or they may not have one done at all. If they haven't had one done at all, then we're going to have to get one scheduled if we decide our buyers are going to ask for one. Or if it's VA, it's mandated, our buyers can't pay for it, so we would have put that in the contract to have a termite report at some point that's going to be part of this contract. But they're going to give us a full report eventually. We're going to get a preliminary title report where the title and escrow company do a title search, and that'll do a look into the legal impact on the property, if there are any liens against it, any unpaid taxes, if there's property line disputes, if there's deadbeat dad judgments on, the dad or the mom, or anything that's going to be affected to the property, the transfer of the title, or the seller involved with that is going to come up on this title search. So when you hear the word prelim on the buyer side, and we'll get a copy of all this stuff, is we're going to get to look at this thing and see, okay, everything looks good. Oh, their taxes haven't been paid. Escrow, hey, yeah, we saw that. We'll make sure taxes are paid out of their net proceeds, and we're good to go. Or it could say, hey, this guy hasn't paid taxes in 2 or 3 years. Okay, now that's a bigger flag. It's going to get paid because they'll take it out of net proceeds, but these are the kind of things we're looking for. Or it might say, hey, there's a property line dispute here, major flag, or it could have a lien on the house from something. So that's going to protect you as a buyer from taking a property that has what's called a clouded title. I mean, there's something on that title that can't be reconveyed to you and transfer with a new deed to you. So these are things, protective devices that the selling side is going to pay for, the lister is going to pay for it, it's going to come to us. But these are things that have to be given to us in those 7 days, right? We have to have access to that. If it comes in after day 7, on day 8 and out, once we receive it, then we have 5 days to review that and cancel in writing. So it leaves us an opening. So most times they'll get it to us in the 7 days. But let's say on day 5, we do our inspection. This is where it starts getting, to the meat of this. So our inspector shows up. We're kind of in the background, just talking, going around the house, looking at it again. And he gets his checklist, and he just starts in the front yard. He's checking the water line from the city. He's checking your outside pressure. He's taking pictures. Too high a pressure, click, need a pressure regulator on the outside. He's looking outside for a couple broken sprinkler heads over when he turns on the system. So he'll write all that out. He'll go open the garage, do the garage door kickback, put his foot down there, see if it comes back properly, safety child mechanism. Oh, the kickback's not working. He writes that out. Safety on the garage door needs to be adjusted. He'll go on the garage. He'll look at the water here. It's all strapped good. Everything looks good. The little vents at the bottom of the walls. Oh, that vent's covered. You got a fume issue. He'll write down, take a picture. The little screen mesh fence in the bottom of the garage is blocked off. He took a picture of it. So he's going to go through the whole house with that kind of mindset. He's going to go inside and run your plumbing. He's going to check for drainage. You'd be surprised how many times hot is cold and cold is hot. I don't know what these guys were doing. They hook up these lines, but the same plumber couldn't tell hot from cold, because I see this all the time where they got to reverse the hot and cold. But he'll write it up. He'll write up that the thing is leaking. He'll write up you got a wobbly toilet. He's going to look and say, oh, there's a stain. Here's something. I'm a little worried about this. This happened to be over on Oxnard off of Lee Place. House I was selling. We go into the back closet, pull open all, and this guy was thorough. Pulled open all the closet. There's a big mold patch in the back of this closet. Oh, that's a big timeout. Takes pictures. You need to get a mold specialist out here. Mold? Yeah, so we'll talk more about that. But he goes through the whole house, checks on all kinds of stuff. When he's done, we're going to do a debrief when you write him the check as the buyer, and he's going to go to all the safety stuff first. Yeah, we see some exposed wire here. You got extension cords in the garage. You got to come out. You got a clay tile piece that's shifted over here. It could be leak. I'm going to refer you to a roofing specialist. You know, that thing didn't drain quite as fast as it should have. I think you might have some backup. And there's this big tree off the corner of your house. Highly recommend you get a sewer lateral inspection. They're going to drop a camera down your toilet, so to speak. So he writes up all this stuff, right? Then we go back and try to absorb it and not scare the client. And the client who's just bombarded with all this stuff, our job to say, okay, here's our big ticket items. Because he's going to send us a hard copy report usually in about 48 hours. He'll email us one. He'll send us a hard copy report, and then we're going to go over that. As is sale, right? We're going over an as is sale. So one thing we're going to tell our client, and we've been pretty good about this, if the house is selling at this price, regardless what that price is, if we come in at this price, even as is, I'm going to be asking for some repairs. If we get a house at this price, we may not get a whole lot of things fixed for us, right? Because we got some equity here. If we're paying over here, we're definitely going to be getting some repairs. But point being is, where as is gets a little bit kind of gray area, if the listing agent doesn't do a good job explaining to the seller himself that whether you buy this home or not, once that mold has been identified, it's there. Once the tiles on the roof have been, you know, kind of specified, that tile's still there. That sewer's still draining slow. So whether you buy the house or not, let's say you pull out, they're going to put it back on the market. They might even bump it up a little bit because they see that they're going to have some repairs coming at them. So I've seen them do that. I've seen them keep it the same price. I've seen them even drop the price. So it just depends on the seller situation. But the fact is that these can be big ticket items. So let's say on Brandon's house, you know, it's as is. We're doing our inspection. Again, he doesn't have to fix any of this stuff. He's just got to make sure it's up to code, right? If there's a permit, hopefully it's coded. If not, he's got to tell us, hey, that might be an unpermitted room there. It's up to you to get the city inspection report, verify your permits, verify your square footage. They always put it on the buyer. Seller doesn't want to do it because they don't want to be responsible for it. And this has actually come up in actual litigation where people have purchased homes and found out as little as a couple feet off, it wasn't in their house, they've gone back and sued people, right? So just square footage can be grounds for litigation. Point with this is, it's as is, we found some issues. Let's say we found a little bit of mold in there. Now what we're going to say is I'm going to call up the phone with Brand and say, hey, we're going to put together a repair, request for repairs. Nothing really scares us except for that back closet. You got a serious stain back there. Anything you can tell us about it? And more times than not, Brandon's going to talk to the seller. Hey, were you aware there was something back there? And the guy might say, yeah, you know what? My thing, I had a picture of sangria. I don't know what the hell. Had a picture of sangria, fell on the back wall and just splashed it. Oh, so it's not mold. No, it's sangria. We got drunk and I ended up in the closet. I don't know what happened. But it could be an explanation like that. Or it could be, yeah, I've been worried about that. That thing was a spot and it started to grow and I never had it checked out. Well, we're going to ask for you to have this actually looked into. Now, the inspections fall upon the buyer. The seller may say, if you want to inspect for mold, that's on you. He doesn't have to inspect for mold. The issue is going to be, though, if you walk away, he's got something now that he knows about. He's going to have to disclose. He's going to have to investigate this. So this is where it comes down to the two agents communicating, trying to come up with a resolution to deal with that issue, okay? So it's just so we can go forward. Now there's no mold. That was a different situation. Now it's just repairs. So we draw up a list as is, and we say, you know what, there's a lot more than we thought. Can we get at least, you know, a couple of these things? Can you tighten down the toilet for us? Maybe put a new wax seal in. That really bothers my client. She has a phobia of falling off toilets, and we don't want her to fall off and crack her head. So yeah, can you tighten that down? And can you at least yank out those extension cords there? I'm not going to ask you to put in Romex with, you know, conduit and everything, but I really don't want to have this because VA, if they're doing the appraisal when they come out there, they may call that out. VA might come out and call out the fact that you're missing a smoke detector. So these are things that should have been fixed before listing, but a lot of times it doesn't happen. Your options as a buyer is to inspect it, identify it, and request repairs. Now this comes down to the negotiation part. This is where the agents start making their money, because now I got to call Brandon and I got to talk to him about things that we're going to ask for. And the first thing he's going to say is, you know, Dad, you know, this was an as-is sale. And I'm going to say, you're exactly right. And that's why we didn't ask for this, and this. But we did give you full price. We're solid buyers. You do have some issues that, you know, I'm not going to say we're going to walk away, but let's work together here because you really don't want to start all over. And that's how you would go forward. You would try to negotiate something with the other agent and see if they can get the seller to be receptive. Okay. So that's what's kind of behind the scenes. And then these days where you see day 17, the appraisal, we got our request in. The appraisal, what should happen with a good lender and a good proactive, you know, team together on this, the second that we, when we open escrow, the agent should be sending a copy of the contract to the loan officer, right? The escrow company is going to get a contract. The loan officer is going to get a contract. All the players involved have signed copies of everything. The agent who knows that we're going to open escrow hopefully is putting in a request for an appraiser. Sometimes the agents don't get to pick the appraiser. Sometimes they order it, the lender, I mean, and it goes into a portal, and whoever comes by is assigned that appraisal does it. And that's kind of a checks and balance, so you can't cherry pick your appraisers, right? We don't want the same person coming out and giving you all the values you want. So that's, again, part of the regulatory stuff that's been worked on over years to help fix appraisabilities. But the appraiser is going to come out, and again, if those smoke detectors aren't there, they're going to call it out. If you've got missing a stove, you know, for VA, they'll call it. I think conventional probably call that out too. If you have certain things, your appraiser is going to protect the buyer by putting pressure on the seller and might have to re-inspect. So the seller, in order to avoid any possible conflict of when appraisers re-inspect, they're going to want to get paid additional money. Who's going to pay for it? It's not my buyer's fault that the smoke detectors weren't in. So a lot of times the listing agent will have a checklist when they take the listing, they'll walk through the house, they'll do a visual inspection called an AVID, agent visual inspection. And they'll say, oh yeah, can you get these smoke detectors put in before we put it on the market? Oh yeah, it's on my list. The seller will already have that on their list. So there's a lot of preparation that goes that's going to affect your inspections. So on day 17, what's happened, now we have put our request in, Brandon's talking to a seller, the appraisal came back. Typically the selling side, the listing agent won't get any understanding of what the value is. It'll come to the buying side. And if it's at 550 and the appraiser goes out and says, yeah, we got enough comps, you're good, came in at value. That's the term they're going to say, at value. If it actually appraises at 555 or 560, more times than not, they're going to say it's still a value. It's rare that they go over 5 or 10,000, sometimes even under that. If it comes under, it's a different story. If they can't stretch it up, then we got to do something. But the appraisal is one of your contingencies out. It's something that you'll pay for a lot of times through the lender or through escrow. But the buyer, well, it wouldn't be through escrow, be the lender. You might have to cut the lender a check. But that could be $400, $500, $600. But the reason you want the buyer to pay for it, again, if the value's here, I want to know that that guy's working for me. I don't want him working for the seller, come out and praise it. Oh yeah, you got this much value in it, right? You don't want him overinflating it. So it's one of the two things that you pay for that's good value that you really want to come out of pocket for. You want to come out for that inspector and you want to come out for that appraiser. Yes, sir.
So Dad, real quick. So I got one of the people that are on here, and he's actually looking to sell his property in the mountains. He tried to sell it before with a couple agents, actually offering 6% commission and couldn't sell it.
Wow.
Yeah, 6% with 2 different agents. It's been a couple years too. So he's looking to sell it on his own. I know this is off topic, but it's still an important question. And I want to make sure, because he was on the call yesterday, almost 3 hours, and then today. And he asked the question pretty early on, but I was trying to table it so we could cover as much of this timeline. And I hope he's seeing something, you know, some good value from this as well, even helping on the seller perspective. But most importantly, so the question is, and I'm trying to get back to the original question. What we got? Okay. So regarding the FSBO comment question, if I've had 2 realtors that wanted their 6%, haven't done anything to advertise or sell my property, know the realtors cover the area because it's out in the mountains and can help. Trying to sell FSBO now after 2 years. And number one, I respect that decision because he's already tried to sell it through agents offering 6%. Right. Really, the only other thing it comes down to, just in my opinion, I mean, representation helps, but just to be clear, every property will sell if it's at the right price. So it's got to be priced right. And even though you're offering 6%, which is great, that's above average, right? 5 is pretty common. That's pretty standard. That I'm assuming and I'm hoping they didn't charge 3.5 on their side and 2.5 on what they offered, but they probably offered at least 3%, which is a strategy to stir up a little bit more interest, right? Commission wise. But at the same time, what drives people right now, because everything's online, is the price. And so it's either got to be both priced at the same place, and one house has more benefits. It's got the pool, it's got the dual pane windows, it's got all the updates, it's got the newer roof, it's got the better location, but they're both at the same price. This is the one that people are going to want and everybody's going to track to. But buyers are very savvy right now. So even if you're off by 5, 10, 15,000, buyers know and will look at those days on market and let you sweat it out. If you don't drop your price, they're just going to let it just sit longer and longer, and you're going to get lowball offer after lowball offer, which is also something similar as a for sale by owner. Because they know that you're not paying the commission, that even if you try to come at the same price or even if you discount the price some, they're typically not going to come at full price. They're typically still going to try to negotiate. And the insurance policy I wanted to make sure you hit on. So do you want to add to that, Deb?
Yeah, if I could. So first question I'd ask the person who's trying to sell this is what motivated them to buy it in the first place? What was appealing about it to them that isn't appealing to, you know, the people he's trying to sell it to? Because there's got to be some kind of an emotional connection for him to buy this property to start with. The second thing is, what kind of feedback did he get from his agents? And was it honest feedback, and was it consistent? Were the agents telling kind of the same thing? More times than not, it's price point, but it's not the only reason that doesn't happen sometimes. Sometimes it's time of year, it's market share, it's where it's at, it's the other contributing factors. Again, what's around him that might be driving things. Is the neighborhood around him going down in price and, you know, turnover? Are homes turning over slower? If homes are turning over at pace with the rest of the local community, they're all turning over pretty much the same pace, and his isn't, and he's not backed up to Lewis Road. He doesn't have some kind of a nuisance, either a quiet nuisance or a loud nuisance that's affecting that property. Then it comes down to how was it marketed and how was it priced. It's one of the two. It's either visibility and desirability or it's price point. And usually it's kind of hand in hand, but it will sell. I mean, he purchased it. You know, we did one over here, backed up to Lewis and got the railroad tracks. And when we bought it, it was the right house to buy for that particular couple. 18 years later, I get a call, say, hey, we're going to go to Florida. We go to list the house, and we're sitting out there. You know who I'm talking about. We're sitting out there, and she goes, I got to ask you a question. I go, what? She goes, what do you think about the train? And I kind of laughed. I said, what do you mean I think about the train? Yeah, it's going to go by in about 10 minutes. She goes, is that going to stop people from buying her house? I said, look, I'll say her name's Sally. Sally, did the train bother you? She goes, oh, no, it never bothered me. I said, well, that's what's going to happen with what's going to happen. Yeah, you're going to have people going to pull up, and they're going to pull up to the street just to see which side of the road are you on. Oh, it backs up to Lewis, and you're just going to take off. That's okay. We only need one buyer. We sold that in 2 weeks. Full price, and people living there now love it. Our folks lived there for 18 years, so something appealed to our folks to buy it, something appealed to these people to buy it. And with your for sale by owner, all I can say is you're doing the right things if you're listening to the feedback and the feedback's honest and you're adjusting to it. If you're getting the market out there, the 6%, one thing you could try is get an agent. If you're going to pay the 6%, then make them earn it. But what I would do is I would pay maybe 2.75 to your agent, 3.25 to the cooperating agent. See if that motivates. Maybe give them a little more than that. But if your agents are getting 3 and 3, either you got the wrong agents working for you, because 3% is a heck of a commission on either side.
Right.
Heck of a commission. So something's missing the boat here. It's that it's either overpriced or the marketing just didn't hit the people you need to see. Because if everything else is the same, the turnover is going in the neighborhoods, and you don't have something on your property that's stopping that, there's no reason why yours shouldn't be turnover as well, unless it's just priced too high.
Yeah.
Worst thing you could do, and not worst thing, but a step you could take, you may have already done it, just pay and have an appraiser come out. Give me an honest to God appraisal instead of your market analysis. May cost you $500, but if you're talking tens of thousands difference in listing and sales price, that's $500 well spent.
Right. Yeah, it's no, there's and not to spend too much more time on it, just a couple little final points with it.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like he's going to follow up with a call, and we'll get into a little bit more details just so we can finish up on the timeline. But thank you for sharing that. There's a lot that comes into it. I know that you also recently helped out somebody who tried to sell for sale by owner, actually a veteran. Tried to sell for sale by owner. Tried it for a while for himself to save the money, ultimately did the right thing, hired you, and you were able to sell it and even help recoup some of that commission at a higher price, because we know how the game works, right? We know how, think of who you're trying to attract, and you're not trying to attract just one offer. You want to try to attract multiple offers if you can, and create it so that you can do that. So, and then I also helped somebody else out in Camarillo try to sell it on his own, tried to save the money. He had one buyer potential who was coming in low and needed certain things to be done. We made him an extra, he was trying to get it at 515. We sold it at 535, and then helped negotiate repairs and protect him in the process. But I know you always talk about the insurance policy, so I didn't know if you were going to, kind of touch on that. But it is.
Yeah. Well, one thing you can do, and I haven't seen one yet, you can always contact your insurance carrier and see if you can get a special rider that'll do any type of E&O for you for a short amount of time.
Right.
Well, people also need to understand, if you're selling a property and you leave it vacant and you got that on the market and you take off and go to Idaho, that house is vacant. You've basically voided your coverage. You can't leave a house vacant and expect the coverage to stay in effect. It will, because they don't know about it. But if, let's say you had a fire, something happened while you weren't there, you get the wrong investigator out and they find out you're living where? There's no one here. They can void your policy. So insurance companies are a little bit unique. You really want to have a good relationship with your agent. Just be upfront with them. Talk to them. Say, hey, I'm thinking on listing this anyway, or do you have a contact maybe within the industry? I can get a temporary E&O, so I'm protected on my side. Because the agent bringing the buyer is going to have E&O representation if he's working for a company.
Right.
So that's one thing that you don't want to lose sight of, is the protection from the insurance company. One thing with when we, and I'll get off the FSBOs real quick. One thing when you look at the for sale by owners, and we started to talk about just calling the sign out front.
Right.
When you call on somebody selling a home, and not saying to take it out of your agent's hands, because sometimes the agent might tell you, hey, go out and look around, call whoever you want to call, just give them my name and number if they have any questions. Let's say you're out there driving around and you just happen to stumble across a neighborhood, you got detoured for whatever reason, and you see this house, like, wow, this is pretty nice. You see a sign on it. If you want to call the sign, I personally don't have a problem calling the sign. Call the agent, talk to him. You'll probably do yourself better if you let me talk to him. I might know more questions to ask, but I'm never going to stop my clients from calling. Let them call. If it turns out my client works a deal with that listing agent and goes off buy the home, I'm just going to wish him luck. The thing is, as a buyer, keep in mind that sign on the front of the house, they already have a fiduciary responsibility to that listing person, that seller. That listing agent has a not only a legal responsibility, many times they've already got a personal relationship with them. So if you dump your agent to hopefully maybe save a few bucks, and you go up, I've seen this happen, unfortunately. You contact Mr. Smith out of ABC Realty who's selling a house. Hey, Mr. Smith, I'm driving out here. I see this home. What's it priced at? Oh, it's priced at X. Cool, cool. Is there any way I can see it? Well, Mr. Smith should ask, do you have an agent? Whether they answer honestly or not, it's up to them. Well, let's say the buyer's been told by, we talk about our C lawyers, you know, hey, you don't need your agent. We'll talk about purple bricks and Brex in a second. You know, you can contact that sign and just say, hey, how about you show me the property? Here's the thing I would just, you know, ask you to take a serious look at. Who's going to represent you when it comes to negotiating? Your agent who's tried to be loyal to you and take care of you and do all this education or teaching you or walking you or, you know, meeting your family, or some listing agent on that sign who's already got a responsibility to this other person. So just be careful if you're going to cross over into the dark side and dump your agent. Unfortunately, I see that quite a bit with buyers. They'll come in an open house. I don't have people sign in. If they want to, one guy would sign the other day. So he goes, I sign in. I said, yeah, you don't have to. He goes, oh, cool. They put the pin down, walked off. If you want to work with me, you'll figure it out quick enough. I want to work with you. If you want to keep working with your people, I'm going to answer your question. Wish you luck. Life's too short to get into that kind of a karma. But as a buyer, some people think they need to do that to get an edge. Your best edge is your agent. Your best edge is your agent. When you see these companies popping up like Purple Bricks and Rex, if you haven't done the research, and I don't fault you as a buyer, all you got to do is pull up any internet news thing and you're going to see sell real estate without an agent. You're going to see all these articles that are popping up like, who needs an agent? Go online and, you know, pull off this site or whatever. The most value when you finally do pick your agent, the most value you're really going to get in this whole process is the agent that you've chosen and the knowledge they're going to bring to the table to protect you and your family. We're going to do everything legal, but my concern isn't the guy who's living in that house. My concern is you and your family who's going to get that house. That's where my concern is. And we're going to use this contract and these days and this timeline to protect you. We're going to negotiate you the best deal we can. That's why the for sale by owners, what they really miss out sometimes, and I get why they want to save the commission, but they're missing out on that expertise because they've sold a house or they bought a house or two. You know, I don't want to get into comparing, you know, stuff like that, but it's something that when somebody comes into your line of work and you're a good CPA, I'm sure you're a great CPA. I'm not going to tell you how to do CPA stuff. Me, I can't spell CPA. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. And not that I'm going to say, don't tell me how to do mine, but give me hopefully as much respect as I'm giving you, that my job is to be your umbrella. My job is to guide you, coach you, protect you, negotiate for you. That's what this is all about. Us spending this time is to get you thinking that when you go out and pick your agent, that you're picking the right person for the right reason. Someone's going to take the time and tell you sometimes what you don't want to hear. One of our biggest jobs sometimes is protecting our clients from themselves. With so much information out there, it's very easy for a client to get bogged down in the BS of some of the stuff that is designed to get in there and overwhelm you, make you think you need something you don't need. Now, this really isn't that difficult, but it can be very complex, very litigious, very stressful. I mean, this can go all over the place if you start going down the wrong path for the wrong reason. But if you use your intuition, use your referrals when people are telling you, hey, you really want to give this girl a call. She is phenomenal. She did everything and then some. I would use her 1,000 years. There's a couple agents in town before my family got involved. Now, obviously, I'd use my family. There's a couple agents in town that I've told them, hey, I want you selling my house when I leave. I respect them that much. I value their expertise. That's the kind of person you want to find. You want to find somebody who is that go-to person. Okay. I got off track here. Where did we leave off on here?
We were, you wrapped up. I don't know if we talked about the out-of-pocket and the earnest money deposit. Maybe if you just want to touch on some of that.
Yeah, well, real quick, it's within 3 days. You know, customary, they like to see 3%. A lot of us don't have 3%. Give what you can afford to write a check for. Understanding that money can be used for a couple things. In the old days, we would invoice out of it. We'd take inspections out and everything else. But now, based on your financing, more times than not, the earnest check usually goes towards either down payment or closing costs. So that $5,000 you put out there, if your closing cost, let's say, is 12 grand, well, there may be 5,000 of it right there. Or if your deposit's going to be 20% and you've already got, everything but 5 grand of that 20% as your down payment, that 5 could be the rest of your 20% down. So you have options to use with it, but it's after the contingencies are removed, it's after you go forward, and it's once the transaction closes, that money will either be used or will come back to you. The thing about the earnest check is very significant is that's the carrot that's being held over the transaction, that when this starts happening between buyer and seller, that's the thing that is being kind of held out there. By you following these time frames and you following the contract, you will never jeopardize that money. But if you break these time frames and you don't follow the things that we're contractually obligated to do, now that money's in jeopardy. It's not saying they're going to get it, but it's not saying you're going to get it either, right? That money's in jeopardy. So that's what that is. That's the monetary carrot that's hung out there that gets the seller to take his house off the market, but it's also in jeopardy. And you have to understand why that's so. There has to be something at risk for them to take off their property, that if we don't live up to our obligations, they have to have some recourse because they're probably going to be damaged to some degree. Now, I've only had, in fact, we just had one in October, November, where our buyer just changed their mind, removed all these contingencies. We were selling the house on Dwight. Our backup buyer, the first one, we wouldn't honor we wouldn't negotiate out. They wanted a $17,000 credit. Have a nice life. We put it back on the market. Backup that we had goes in, and she was at emotional roller coaster we talked about last night. She was wound and good to go, and that should have been a flag to me. So she comes in, gives a full price, has a ton of cash, everything solid, inspections. We had the inspection things all taken care of. Right before she does the loan docs, excuse me, right before she signs loan docs, we get a call. Vividly remember this just happened. Jim, I had an accident. I don't feel good. I got to cancel. It's like, what? Yeah, first of all, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. We're bruised up, but, I don't feel good about going through it. It's like, I'll name her name's Betty. That's not her name. I said, but Betty, we're past our contingencies. She goes, I get it. And I know you removed all of them. I said, you got $5,000 online. She goes, it's worth it to me. I just need to let it go. I said, okay. Now there still could be damages from our seller because they were buying a house in Oregon, and this was contingent on Oregon closing. So that $5,000 she was willing to give up, that wasn't the end all to this story. She could have lost $5,000 plus damages on the other end if my clients who were moving to Oregon lost their earnest check because now they have removed their contingencies. The thing that saved us in this transaction was I found a good agent in Oregon, and she goes, and they were buying new construction up there. I told her what happened. She goes, well, that really stinks. She goes, let me call the builder. I'll see what we can do, and we'll try to hold them off so, your clients get their money back up in Oregon. So sure enough, we got really fortunate. They held off. They kept the house to the size as long as they could. My buyer for the house I'm selling, Dwight, walked away and gave away $5,000 because we followed the contract. She removed every contingency, and then she just flat out changed her mind. Part of this time frame is structured to give you ample opportunity to come off that roller coaster, get to reality, and understand, we're kind of messing with people's lives here. They're on hold. This was an elderly couple who were dear friends who were selling to move to Oregon. Everything's going well. Everything's moving right along. And then all of a sudden, I don't want to buy. And she used a car accident. She just changed her mind. Now, had she changed her mind in here before we remove these contingencies, then there's a good chance we give her money back and we just go about our business. So we ended up putting it back on the market. We had another offer. We ended up closing it, and our folks got their house in Oregon. So there was no real damage. But that particular buyer, in my almost 23 years of doing this, 24 years doing, I don't know, whatever it is, that's the only money I've ever seen go away from one of my clients. Only one, and she just walked away from it. So that was on her. So it's kind of rare, but the earnest check, that's what that's all about. Okay. So as we get through these dates, Brad, do you have a question you want to get to, or?
Yeah, there was a question, but also just to kind of, if you're okay, because you know, just to kind of change gears up a little bit, because we're hitting all the timelines. I know there's some final points that you want to hit on. One of the things I wanted to mention, I put out-of-pocket expenses on this chart, right? What we want the buyers to understand is there's certain things that if they decide to cancel, yes, we'll protect that earnest money, but there's a cost to doing business. That appraisal is going to run roughly between $450 to $650.
Yeah.
That money, once it's spent and the appraiser goes out there and does it, you still have to pay that cost if you cancel the transaction. The home inspection, which can range between $350 to $450 based on the size of the house and what inspector you use, right? That's another cost. And then if you do other inspections, there could be an HVAC inspection, a roof inspection. You can start adding up. You can start ranging. 1,000 is a good rough estimate, but you do a mold for 400 plus, starts adding up, and you're looking 1,500-ish. That is the cost of doing business, but you're doing your due diligence. It's a big investment for you, and so I want to make sure that's there. So real quick to everybody, I put Jason and Mark in position. You guys are still here. Thank you all for hanging in too. I know we went further than we wanted to and into the Q&A time. We still got more in this timeline we're going to finish on, but if you have questions, especially in loan relation, and this is a question that I wanted to ask them. Right now with the COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order, it's impacting people's jobs, right? It's impacting job stability. It's impacting hours. So the question that I have for Jason and Mark, when you guys get a chance, if you're able to open it, is please share some of the horror stories or the negative things that we want to know about, so that before we remove all contingencies and put that $18,000 or $20,000 or whatever that 3%, it could be $5,000 or it could be $500, right? But whatever amount of money it is, before we put that at risk, what are some things we need to be careful about? Because in the past we would say, okay, we got a clear to close, we got full contingent or a full loan approval with just some minor conditions, and we know that these are just common conditions, and you're good to remove all your contingencies. So before we remove contingencies, and that's a good faith excuse out of the contract, and we remove all our ways out and put that earnest money in jeopardy, what are some of the things we need to be leery of? And I see, Mark, you're unmuted. Can you go first with that?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Brandon. What a great meeting this evening. Good job, you guys. Great, thorough stuff. I guess the biggest thing we're looking at now, there's always not a question, but we always want to make sure before we remove that loan contingency that this loan is solid, because we're putting that good faith deposit at risk. So right now, I'm always having conversations with the borrowers. How is your job security? I'm confirmed with the employer that there's no issues. That job's going to last. There's no issues. What industry is it in? Is it in the entertainment business? Are you a DJ? Not a lot of parties going on right now. You know, are you a police officer? You're working a lot. You're a nurse. You're working a lot. So we're looking at things like that. A lot more detailed. A final paycheck. We're looking for a paycheck 2 days prior to closing, or a confirmation from your employer that yes, you are still employed. So with the COVID-19 issue, it's really imperative that we know those jobs are secure and there's no issue with that continuing. In fact, if I could mention too, I had a couple calls today, Brandon, was really interesting. A client was, one of my listing, my buyer's agent was going to show a property, and the listing agent called me before they showed the property to make sure they were a valid borrower. The seller actually didn't want them in their house until they knew this person could actually buy a house. Taking it to an extreme, no question. But the importance of getting qualified prior to and knowing your job is going to continue in this market is really, really important.
Absolutely. And it is something that we have to reemphasize with our clients. We're dealing with a different time than the way things were done even a month or 2 months ago. The requirements that we're seeing in the agent remarks is that they want to see a pre-approval of today or within the last week, not a month ago, not 2 months ago, not a year ago, right? Or not, oh, I'll get to that. And we're getting pushback from people that really don't know us as well. I mean, our past clients, they know us really well. But those that don't know us as well, or maybe we ran into them at an open house when there was open houses, right? We don't have that anymore. There's changes and there's these precautions that are being put in place, and all for everybody's safety. But more importantly, they want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row. So you have to start with a loan officer and get pre-approved as of today because they're going to verify your employment, because hours have been cut back across the board, even for essential clients that I have that are essential workers. They're affected by the economy. Their hours have been cut back. And guess what? They may have qualified a month ago. Now they don't qualify, or they qualify for much less. So we need a current to-date pre-approval. And it's not the end of the world if you're affected by your hours now. That's okay. Still get in, get all those boxes checked off. And then when your hours do come back up, then they can bump a higher pre-approval for you. But you want to get that snowball rolling now, because if you wait till everybody else feels good and everything's all nice and rosy again, I think you're actually going to see more buildup. I actually think that you're going to see higher prices, and I just had it validated the other day off a guy who's big on the economy and the numbers and watching all the trends. He actually thinks there's still going to be about a 2% appreciation, a 2% increase next year. And with the rates as low as they are, the biggest thing that's stabilizing the prices is the lack of inventory. There's still minimal inventory. We're still at about 2.5 months supply. So I wanted to make sure we got into this, Dad. I hope you're okay with this, because I think this is very relevant. And I want to make sure we hit this while we have some questions coming in, for the loan officers that have trooped it out, through this entire seminar. Were there any other final points you wanted to hit on, Dad, before, we hear what Jason's answer is for any other?
Yeah, well, one thing Mark said, and I appreciate both of them being here, what he just said, I saw earlier today on a listing. We got a couple different clients we're working with. I'm going to show them a property, I think, tomorrow. But it said on there, they want full approval. They even let them in the house. So this is on the agent remarks. So we're seeing that hesitation. There's a lot of fear all over the place, and the listing agents on some of these. And I get it. There's so much things going on in terms of day-to-day back and forth on some of this stuff. If you want to be protective and protect your clients, you don't want them in your house as they have to be, but you don't want to get going down the wrong path. I mean, you can't close the deal. So I just saw this say exactly what Mark just said, and I hadn't seen that before.
Thank you. And Jason, anything else you want to add, just in terms of, I guess, precautions to take if you were to advise agent, because we got mostly agents that are still watching this, and thank you for all of you that are sticking to this, because this is great training. I was actually sharing this with somebody earlier today, that this is the way that my dad taught me and my family, my brothers and my sister-in-laws, the business, through his home buyer workshop. This was our training program. He taught us how to be agents through this. So I don't think there's any other better training material than what my dad is teaching us on, because he teaches it from the heart, based off experience, based off of what he truly believes and knows is right. And it's always leading with the heart and doing what's best for your client's best interest, right? So thank you, Dad, for, again, sharing this for everybody and the agents that we've opened it up to, because this is about sharing information and sharing best practices. And as we come together, regardless of what company you work for, but we help each other out, we make this industry better. I know we brought some rough scenarios up. In times of desperation, people do desperate things. Doesn't make them bad people, but those are the reasons why we have these ethics things in places, right? But it's not for us to judge, just something for us to learn and maybe be a little bit more careful the next time we potentially see that property come up, because we have a track record and a tendency to know that certain people will act certain ways, right? So that's all it is. But in reality, 98, 99% of the situations, we're working with great agents. We're working with great people, and we're all working together. So Jason, try to give you a little buffer time there. I can get going as well. Any things you'd like to point out about what you're seeing today and what to be careful before you remove that final contingency?
Yeah, definitely. Hey, thanks for having me. You guys are doing a great job putting this together here. Mark did a great job of covering it as well. The main issue right now is employment. One of the biggest changes today that we have is the documenting the ability to pay. And right now there's over 20%, as I recall, unemployment right now. It's just crazy numbers. And we have to make sure that the buyer is employed at the time of closing. So typically, my main objective is to always have final approval, ideally even docs, prior to day 21 or whenever the contingency removal date is, based on the contract. So I feel good about, saying, hey, Brandon, Jim, agents, go ahead and remove that contingency as long as the buyer wants that home. Let's do it. Now, there's always things that could come out of left field, and it happens even in times when unemployment is in single digits, real low levels, that a buyer could become unemployed. We usually have a prior to funding condition to re-verify employment. as well as make, sometimes there's soft pull checks to make sure they haven't opened up any new debt. So it really goes back to, the best practices of communicating with the buyer and having that conversation, like Mark said, just making sure that nothing's changing within their work, making sure that, if they're no longer working overtime, or if their overtime is going to be decreased, or they're not getting that bonus, we really need to know that up front, because ultimately it's going to come out. And we just want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction so that there's not any surprises at the very end. So the only other thing is there are a lot of guideline changes. Some lenders are doing things differently than others. Most lenders have what's called pipeline protection. So once the loan is locked in, usually you're locked in under the new guidelines, or the old guidelines, I should say. We're starting to see some lenders pull back even on self-employment income. It kind of makes sense to some businesses at least, but we're seeing some lenders that say, okay, well, not only do we want higher credit scores, but we're only going to give you 75% of the income that you claimed in 2019 or 18, just because there's obviously going to be a disruption in most businesses this year. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going on that, will come out. And if you're locked in, you have usually a little bit of pipeline protection. So the key is, just to get your loan locked in up front, have the right conversations with your lender, and, just try to get the loan closed, have that date from contingency removal to the closing date as tight as possible is my recommendation to the agents.
Yeah, no, great points. Anything you wanted to say? Okay, real quick. I lost you there. I got a question. Question for the loan officers. Can you go over the main thing underwriters look for and how quick or late they will approve loans? Can you give some example or experiences you've had that's taught you something other than the info you've already provided? So just, I guess, really, what are underwriters looking for? We talked about job stability is really important right now. And then are they taking a little bit longer right now? Is it getting a little bit better? What are you seeing just off your current transactions? Jason, you're still unmuted. If you could start with that.
Well, there's been a lot of disruption with, a lot of businesses with the stay-at-home order. A lot of underwriters were, previously working in a bullpen or a closet, where they were being micromanaged, and now they're working at home. So yeah, we are seeing, a lot of companies have to go through a little bit of a process to adapt to the new environment that we're in. So turn times have certainly been extended with some lenders. So other lenders were already, working from home. So it's interesting. There's a handful of lenders out there that are almost not even skipping a beat, that are kind of being rather proactive through all this. And then there's lenders that you can just tell they were just, ill prepared. They were, had the old sweatshop, bullpen mentality where they're used to, using a whip, to get results kind of thing. So as far as what else they're really looking for from like a loan detail level, it's really the employment is huge. They've always been doing their job, in recent years. They have to follow the guidelines. They have several checkpoints even after underwriting. They have quality controls and auditing. So really it's just them being really cautious on the income that they're using, especially variable income, to ensure that it's stable and it's likely to continue.
Okay. And anything FHA, because the rumor, and actually I got Mark unmuted. Jason, thank you for that. I'm going to switch to Mark real quick, give him a shot at it. If there's any points that you wanted to share, but I was going to bring up about FHA because there's been some talk that FHA has been something that, underwriters are kind of, or, holding back, or lenders are concerned because of the whole forbearance, right? So anything you want to share with FHA? Is FHA still happening? Has the credit scores changed in terms of what the requirement is?
Yeah, yes and yes. Requirements have changed for FHA loans. The rates are slightly higher than they were previous to this. However, there's still loans out there. I'm doing a loan today. FHA 640 FICO, the basic 3.5% down, good job security, and we got an approval on it. So it is doable. The rate's slightly higher, but it wasn't an issue to the borrower. It was only maybe 0.5% higher than where it would have been a month ago. Still approvable, still doable. So as long as your lender has options, that all their loans aren't in a specific box, there's something that's out there that will work for your borrower most of the time. Jason spoke perfectly about how this works. Certain lenders weren't ready. And I know Jason can, and we can still close a purchase in 30 days because we're set up accordingly. It's all in-house, underwriting in-house, funding in-house, docs in-house. The whole thing is controlled by us. So purchase take priorities. And that's in a market where, like Jason said, people are working from home. So that's bound to slow the business down. And there's a ton of refis because the rates are so good. But what purchases to always take priorities. I'm sure they do with Jason, they do with me, that they run through faster than refinances. So still close on time, but a lot stricter. The biggest concern that investors like, or banks like we have, direct lenders have, is getting that loan purchased. With the I's have to be dotted, the T's have to be crossed, or we're going to end up with that loan. So underwriters are very, very, very thorough. The borrowers, if the loan officer isn't educating the borrowers, they might get frustrated because we have to ask for so much stuff all the way to the last minute. You know, I just emailed the buyer tonight and make sure you get me your last paycheck and the HR contact at your company because we have to call them because we're going to fund in 2 days. So there's a lot of stuff, but as long as your loan officer is educated enough to make sure the borrower understands in advance that this is going to be pretty detailed. It always is, but this is a little bit more extreme. They're not going to get angry. They're going to know and anticipate it. So as long as your lender's doing that, I think it makes the whole transaction a lot smoother.
Awesome. Great job. Anything else, Jason, you want to add to that?
Well, Mark, I think kind of covered it a little bit, but, you know, basically the age of documents, bank statements, as well as, you know, the pay stubs, we have to keep getting updated stuff throughout the whole process. Even on the post-closing side, there's a couple lenders out there. And the reason for that is if a loan closes and a buyer ends up, you know, losing their job, they go into forbearance, the loans are, you know, they could still be purchased. But it's at a very large cost, a cost that would take 10 other loans to close to recoup. So, you know, ultimately lenders have to, you know, we're businesses. We don't necessarily get bailouts. I know a lot of people might think that there's a big, you know, a lot of companies getting bailed out, but there's a lot of accountability ever since Dodd-Frank from the last financial, you know, reform in 2008, the mortgage meltdown, where lenders have to act responsibly. And we have to, again, going back to making sure that there is the ability to pay. And with, you know, 1 out of 5 working Americans being out of work, you know, there's a heightened risk of, you know, possible concern and, you know, someone going into a potential forbearance shortly after the loan closes. So, you know, it's just communication is key with everyone, not just now, but always when it comes to real estate to ensure, you know, the deal's done right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. Dad, any final points that you want? I want to open it up to everybody, but I also want to see, because we cut it off right before, and the reason why I wanted to bring the loan officers in is because before we remove that final loan contingency and remove all our contingencies and put that earnest money at risk, this is the type of conversation we want to have. We want to speak with our loan officer directly and make sure that they feel comfortable and confident of saying, hey, we're going to be good to go. Is there anything that can happen, anything at all that could potentially put us in position? And I know Jason and Mark and I all know that these conversations are critical, and they're not always the easiest conversations. But as my dad's taught me from day one, bad news travels faster than good news, right? And I only work with agents and loan officers that work in that same type of integrity and are cut from that same cloth. It's not about always telling me what I want to hear just so that we can be friends, right? This is about, I need to know what I need to know so that I can protect my clients and protect them contractually and protect that earnest money deposit. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, this format speaks volumes about what we need to do as an industry, open lines of communication, not looking for who's in an opposing office, either lender versus lender, agent versus agent. It's us. We're all on the same team, right? If you look at real estate, if you want to get a sports analogy, since we have no sports, we may as well talk about it. We're all on the team. We're all on one team, period. Now, other people are up to bat while other people are on the bench. We're supporting each other. The thing that I see that usually makes for a smooth transaction are a couple things. If I have a lender that, you know, takes my calls, sometimes tells me what I don't want to hear, but he's honest and he's forthright with me, I'm okay with that. I need that. If I have an agent on the other side who doesn't want to tell me some bad news, but I know I need to hear it, I'm okay with that. I think what we have to do is get comfortable in our own skin that I can call Miss Smith, who's the other agent, and even though we had to negotiate hard to get this thing into escrow, I know she's a professional. I'm going to try to stay professional, not going to make it personal, because at the end of the day, nobody wants to get sued. She wants to represent her seller. I want to represent my buyer. My lender wants to make sure everything's happy. There's no reason, and I get the commissions. I get all that. I get the competition and a small market, a lot of agents, a lot of lenders. I get all that. But that makes it even more imperative when you think about this, that we have good communication lines. We're okay to spread some bad news, because the second we do that, now we can brainstorm, well, how do we come up with a solution? And one of the biggest things I've seen that makes my job easier is when I got a lender who's willing to call over and speak with an agent, sometimes late at night. I don't like to go there first in the morning, and pitch my guy or my gal or my client. The one to get her say, hey, here's what we're coming to the table. I'm going to work hard on this file. I vetted this person. They've got a couple little things. I don't see any issue with it. As long as the employment stays cool, we're good. When I have a lender who's willing to do that, and I have an agent on the other side who's willing to take that call, and I've asked them before, hey, I'm going to send you an offer. Do you mind if my lender calls you and really talks? Because I can talk about my client from the real estate side. The important stuff, the other agent wants to know, can this guy close a deal? Can they get financing? Well, that's right. You need to bring in the pro. That's right. I bring in a Mark, or I bring in a Jason. And if they make that call and they're willing to keep this communication going, we're cool. That's the heart of, in my opinion, smooth, efficient escrow transaction sales, the whole 9 yards, is the willingness to send that call, make that call, the willingness to receive it, and as long as we're doing this, and you touched on it earlier, I think we're really fortunate. We're really fortunate. We've got an industry that we have the kind of professionals around us that we have. We have younger people. You got old farts like me who hang around until we're kicked out. You got the whole spectrum of personalities, ethnicities, experience levels, full-timers, part-timers. Everybody was a newbie at some point. I love working with new agents because I remember that feeling. When I broke in at RE/MAX, you had to generate your first 6 deals as a mentor. Deal 7, I wanted that 100% split. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I wanted that split, right? So Martha Beckman was the office manager, and I'm over there just pumping her for information, trying to look like, yeah, I'm paying you a lot of money for this split, but I know what I'm doing. But hey, what do I put in for this? What do I put in for that? I didn't learn squat on my first 6 deals, but I learned who to recognize would be an ally and somebody who I was trying not to be threatening, somebody I wanted to support. And I never forgot that feeling of being that newbie and kind of green out there. And you got to jump out there with both feet. The other agent thinks, have you done this before? They already know you're new. You don't have to ask. I don't even ask anymore. I can tell by the way certain things happen. So I don't bring it up. What I offer is, hey, if you need any help, any questions, feel free to give me a call. It gets a little weird because as a broker in another company, they may be afraid to kind of cross over with a phone call. I just like this venue with bringing in people who can share their experiences. All this does is generate, the industry that we need to have, and that's a working relationship.
I think that's awesome, Dad. And I just want to piggyback off what you just said. What I'd like to do with Jason and Mark, if you guys are open to it, because you two are phenomenal. And I'm not just saying it because you're on here. I'm very particular about who I work with. I'm very careful with who I will endorse. And no offense to anybody else out there that I have not sat down with that has reached out. It's just, time's too short. And when you find good people and good professionals, it's you treasure it and you keep it as close as you can to you, because we know how hard it is in this business to work and to build a good reputation and to do the right things. And a lot of times you don't get paid when you do the right things over and over and over, because that's not in the best interest of the clients. And I know I've seen it, and I know I can put my name out there on these two. So thank you guys for joining. What I'm hoping to do in the future, if you guys are open to it, we may do this I can't say every week, but maybe a bi-weekly thing where we hop on maybe on a Friday night, especially if we're staying at home. Maybe we'll have an adult beverage next to us or so, and just have a nice conversation. Yes.
Brent, if I can real quick, because I don't know who all's on here.
Right.
But if you've got some other
We're
agents
all agents right now. So it's
okay, cool. No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
If you got them and they want to share something or bring up a point or scream at the moon, I don't really care.
Yeah.
But if you want to give them a chance to say something, because I think that the folks who've taken the time to give up the time to be with us, again, value there. It's part of the whole process of us getting out, getting to know them getting to know us. But this is what, when we hang up and we go to bed tonight, sooner or later, you're going to be writing an offer on one of their listings. So
Right.
they're going to be writing an offer on your listing. And this just speaks volumes, though, to hear any input they want to say. How could we do it better? How could you be more involved with these kind of things? I love it. I love this forum because this is a perfect time to kind of brainstorm. I mean, we use this to get the message out, but really what we need is more dialogue as an industry. We need more of this interaction.
Absolutely. And so I just allowed everybody to speak. So just unmute yourself if you have a question or a point. Blanca, you've done a great job bringing up good questions, good points. I'm sorry I couldn't jump into each of them. As you saw, there were still things that we wanted to tap into that we couldn't. And I wanted to make sure we covered as much of that timeline as we can. But feel free to speak up and ask a question just really quick. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to pick a particular day. If you guys want to just send me a quick message on what would be most convenient, and we're going to cut it down to about 30 minutes to an hour. And as you see the way that we speak, it's probably likely going to be an hour. But we're going to focus on one topic at a time. So one topic will be just writing offers, right? And what do we do when we write offers? What are some negotiation strategies? What are some good questions to ask listing agents? Then another section, we'll talk about contingencies. And this could not only just be for agents, but also for our friends or people who are thinking about learning about real estate, right? So we want to educate the consumers that are out there. So this is going to be something that we do on a regular basis. We'll pick a time that works for everybody, and we'll be hard on that hour stop because we're not going to try to cover a 4-hour segment like what we've tried to do over the last 2 days and not do it justice. So instead, we're going to pick specific topics, including having the professionals to give us a strong pulse of what's happening today. And then agents share what's happening as well. And this isn't a brag board. This isn't about, oh, look at all the great transactions I've done, or I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and making anybody else feel inadequate. It's not about a one-up. It's about working together. It's about sharing what you can that's best for the group so that we can all grow and learn together. So if you're on board with that, please feel free to shoot a quick message. Just say, yes, I'd like that, or whatever it is. And if you have any questions, especially for Mark, for Jason, and for my father, as you see, there's a wealth of knowledge and information on here. Please feel free to ask those questions, and thank you for your patience. And Blanca, I'll actually give you that first opportunity. Well, actually, before Blanca, I'm gonna take that back. Mike, I don't know if you can unmute yourself. You've been the champ on here in terms of for 2 days powering through this. And I hope we delivered some of the goods you were looking for. Are you on here, Mike?
Yeah, I finally figured out how to connect tonight.
There we go.
Hey, thanks a bunch, you guys. It was great. I'm so glad this is recorded because it's a lot of information, but I'm really just excited that you guys are talking about doing this with a higher frequency. And as people become smarter from watching your material, they're going to have more questions. They're going to have intelligent questions, and that's when we're going to get really deep into the rabbit hole. But a lot of good things are going to come out of it. So I really appreciate it, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions that you have for the I don't even know, you mentioned the Oracle. I was going to say the OG, the original gangster over here in my top left corner of my screen. And can you see everybody's screen on here? Can you guys all see each other? Dad, can you see everybody?
Yeah, I see a few people.
Okay.
I see, I see some pictures.
Yeah, we still got a good 8 plus 2, so 10 on here. So thank you all for hanging in here. And again, I know we went a bit longer there. Anything that you have, Mike? Any specific questions, that could help you right now?
Yeah, where do I start? Okay, so, okay, for example, and this is going to be, and I apologize if I didn't capture it while you guys were talking, but every once in a while I have to take a pause. It's just a lot of data. There's a place that we're looking at. Like I did the one thing you guys have talked about, but it's just because I'm a techie. I didn't feel like one last night, but it was a long day. And I actually went on to one of the smart platforms on I think it was Zillow. And I just do that. just to kind of see what a high level of the market looks like. And Brandon, you know that you guys are gold to my family. So when I do start looking at real estate, that's when we're going to be kind of reaching out to you. But I'm just kind of thinking about what the art of possible is right now. We've got some properties that you guys know I'm doing short-term rentals on, and it's been fortunately very successful.
Right.
So if I'm looking into a market into, say, like Northern California or Colorado, how do we approach something like that? You guys are the top shelf here in Ventura County. I know that for a fact. But how do we approach buying a home in Colorado? Is it something to where you guys think we should be kind of doing some market research? Do we reach out to you guys and say, hey, do you have any contacts there? Or what kind of approach would you recommend for something like that?
Great question. Dad, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would just ask you timing. What's your timing that you're looking at in terms of maybe going out and just starting the process, knowing that you may not finalize anything immediately, and your location and price range. So if you get those three things kind of established, and the price range might change by the time you get there, locations might change. Usually your timing is pretty well set unless your schedule gets messed around. But I would talk to you as much as I could before you left, and then I'd give you one of a couple options. See what you think on your own as far as calling and interviewing some agents. But one thing we've done quite a bit since I helped a lot of the guys at the base is tried to call around different parts of the country and establish some relationships with some of the clients. Mine were mainly around military installations, but not clients, but some of the agents. But it's the same kind of a process. Is you want to kind of let some of your, again, I always go back to gut feeling, because your intuition has gotten you to this part in your life, right? Almost all of us have gotten here because we've used our instincts more times than not. Well, it still applies here when you start looking at making a purchase, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 miles away. When you start talking to people on the phone now with Yelp and reviews and everything else, it's easy to see what people think of them. That's half of the battle. Now, what do you think of them? When you talk, some of the questions. One thing I didn't say last night, but I tell a lot of buyers in the seminar where I teach it in the class is, ask your agent a question you already know the answer to. Why would I do that? Well, for two reasons. One, to see how they respond. Two, if they don't know it, is there any humility where they say, you know what, I don't know that, but that's a damn good question. Let me find out and get back to you. I want to see the reaction to the question. I already know the answer. Now, some questions, I don't know the answer, so I'm counting on it. But when you interview on the phone, that's the kind of thing. When you start talking to people and you get a feel for their experience, I'm looking for their experience, but I'm really looking for the integrity. Because if I'm going to put my family in a position where I'm going to go out and commit on that kind of level, I need to have the integrity. I need to have somebody on the other end that I can count on who's got my back. And you can do a lot of that over the phone, especially now with Skype and everything else. You can read some body language and you can feel it out, but go back to your instincts. Your instincts will take you a long ways. I don't know if that helps you or not, but that's what I would do. And I wouldn't be opposed to interviewing for you, but ultimately you're going to make that decision.
Yeah, I've got like 2 or 3 different things I'm thinking of, and I think Brandon and you are wrapped into 2 of them. I just haven't approached you guys yet. And I think one of them is here in California, so it's definitely road trip worthy, Brandon. And
there you go.
Of course, Jim.
Let's do it, man. We've already talked about it, and now it's. I actually got a call from somebody through a good friend of mine, referral, a couple hours out. And I'm thinking really hard. It's like, all right, couple hours, let's do it. Let's go for it, and we'll see how it all works out. But just in terms of on a friendship level, whatever you need help with, we got you. You know what I mean? We're gonna help you. Even on the interview, as you talk about Colorado, we brought up the stat before, almost 700,000 people left in 2018. You're gonna see more and more people leave. Affordability is hitting California, right? So you got the boomers, and you got many people who are ready to retire, and they're tired of it. They're tired of California. They're tired of the politics. They're tired of taxes, everything. So they're ready to make that final move. So you're going to see a lot of homes that are going to come up for sale, and they're moving out of state. Well, almost, how many people, and we could talk a long time about this, are moving out. So what we do for our clients, and what our clients joke about, is they're like, look, we had a great experience here. You rocked it, right? Now I'll pay for your flight to this other state, and I want you to do the same thing for me on the purchase. And I smile real big, and I'm very appreciative and flattered to hear that. But when it comes down to it, just like we know what questions to ask when we're interviewing, and when I say interviewing, it's on the listing side. We interview the other agent, right? We're interviewing who we want to work with. I do the same thing when I'm looking to connect you with the right agent or professional in Colorado. There's certain questions I can ask about to them, not just at how many homes have you sold, but I can find out really quick, how well do they really know the market? And what are they seeing right now? What's happening on negotiations? And you know, what's realistic? And are people getting pretty good opportunities? Is it coming in over asking, right? So these are all questions that you can ask them and you can follow your gut. But there's something that if my dad makes the call or if I make the call, right, it's you know, it's our field, as you know, it's the back of our hand. So we know just to, based on how they hesitate or how they answer that question, it's like, all right, this guy passed stage one. Now you ask him your questions and go to stage two and see kind of where you're at from there. So, you know, if that helps at all, Mike, that's, you know, we got your back and we're willing to do that. And let me know how far we're driving, man. And we'll just figure it out. As long as there's beers involved, I think we can work something out.
That sounds like a plan. There's 2 microbreweries that will be passing, and it's under 3.5 hours.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds like a plan.
If
All right.
I can say one thing, I must be screwing the pooch here because no one's offering to fly me anywhere. My last, I've had 1 listing, and the last probably 10 that have stayed in the state of California. 9 of them have left, and I haven't gotten offered any flights anywhere.
Well, I'm not going to try to brag or set the bar a little high, but we've got a client offered a Big Bear timeshare for a week. That was pretty cool. You know, as a nice thank you. He was the one that also offered.
What's happened? I'm not getting any of these things, so I need
You've
to
just
get
done
some
a
of
great
that
job,
Grecian
man.
hair color for my beard. Maybe I'm too old. I don't know.
No, it's some awesome people that we've met through this business. So it's just, you know, this is all about service. And on a serious note, you know, joking a little bit, but on a serious note, you offer more service, you always focus outward, and you take care of people and do what's right, and good things come back. It's not about the commissions. It's not about the money. Yes, you can get paid very well if you do a good job, and people will pay for the value that you bring. But it's not about that. The focus is on serving other people. So I want to ask, and I know I mentioned Blanca, and thank you for being patient, Blanca. Dahlia, it's been a while since we last talked. Do you have any questions or anything you'd like to share, or even just feedback on kind of this experience?
Oh, I really like the presentation. I have a lot of college friends that are in the military.
Awesome.
So I enjoyed this. Some of them move around a lot, as you know, because of their jobs. They work in the LA Air Force Base. But I was just curious, is that the only people you help?
Oh, no.
Only veterans, or do you reach out to other people?
Everybody. But thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and please thank your friends for their service. So no, my dad's retired Navy, and that's where his passion is. His very first company that he opened up was called Paradise Estates, and the motto was a family company with family values. And we took a lot of pride in that company, and some amazing agents have developed some amazing careers based off of my dad's principles in terms of what he taught us. So with this, there were quite a few things that happened just over time, but my dad really over the last, I'd say, decade, has truly just had a burning desire to help out military and veterans. And so he wanted to build a company around that passion. Now we serve everybody, we help everybody, and we're open to helping everybody. And that's why even the format of this one, we did a VA interview some time ago. And if I haven't sent you the interview, I'll send it to you. It's long, but a lot of good information and a lot to help out your military friends. But one of the topics we'll do in the future, if you're open to it, is a VA topic. And it'll be on the financing side. So we'll bring in Jason and Mark and those that specialize in the VA. There's some other good VA resources that we have. And we'll come in and they're going to teach us so much. And when I started in the business, if I can offer any advice, I was always like, okay, I do real estate, they do loans. I don't really need to know or understand too much. Just trust that, hey, if I get it over to Jason, he'll take care of it. And what I found out is the more that I know, I can actually make Jason's job a little easier. I can help him out. I can say, hey, what do you need help with? Oh, I need this document. Okay, let me call my client, right? And it's that communication we talked about earlier. So the more we know, and then the more we can sell it to a listing agent, because we understand, and now we can negotiate stronger on our client's behalf.
Yes.
So does that answer your question? I know it's a long answer.
I have a current person I'm looking for homes, and he's a VA. So I'll reach out to your resources, and thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, Dahlia, thank you for hanging in here, and thank you for joining us. And I'm glad you hopped on, and it's all recorded. So We'll send it out to you. I actually did this one on Facebook Live, so you can even watch it on Facebook, but I'll share it with you. And then it takes time, but I'll try to cut some down and edit some as well, and then do a kind of a cleaner version that doesn't have, you know, some of the interruptions in it. But no, it was a pleasure. Any other questions that you have, maybe for my dad or Jason? If you have a VA, I know we can do it offline, but anything you could benefit?
I'll ask you later.
Okay, no problem, Dahlia. Well, thank you. And then Blanca, thank you for your patience. Any good stuff? And I know you had some great questions throughout, so thank you for keeping it engaging. And as you saw yesterday, it was tough to stay on track, and we went really long, and we did another good, pretty long one today. So thank you for hanging in there. But what was your experience, and any questions that you have for Jason or my dad?
It seems just like a lot of same experiences, and it's again reassuring, and it makes you feel good. I mean, it makes a person feel good when you know you're not in it alone. It sounds like you guys have gone through some similar situations, or like Dalia just mentioned, she has a client who's a VA or is going to have a VA loan. You don't want to give that client away. You want to be able to help them, but you know there are other people like yourself and your father who have that niche that you have more experience in that area. I had the experience with dealing with a lot of law enforcement officers because my late husband was with the sheriff's department. So a lot of my clients happen to be law enforcement officers, and I've taken care of a few who are also, a lot of people in that line of work come from military. So I've had a few, and it's good to know just exactly, I'm going to repeat what you said. It's good to know the lender that you're working with, and to know if they have that experience as well, because there are certain things that do change when it comes to particular loans. And if you don't understand it, and you put your client in a position where, they're trying to purchase a particular house, and they cannot fund for that house because of the loan they have, it makes you want to be well prepared. So it's good to have a good team. The lady that I worked with was, I don't know if any of you are familiar with her. Her name was Mitzi Grasso, and I think she remarried, so her last name is probably different. Out in Westlake, she was also a law enforcement officer doing loans on the side. Yeah. And so it was great teamwork, because there was that personal relationship there of all of us understanding one another's schedule. It was really funny. For instance, I had this client who's worked with my husband, and I'm up at midnight because I'm a night owl, and I have insomnia, and I'm speaking to my husband while he's on shift, and he hands the phone over to his partner, and then another guy asks, who's he talking to? Oh, my wife. Well, why is he talking to your wife that late at night? He's never going to find another agent that's going to pick up the phone at midnight. And it just happened to be that we were on the same schedule, and I understood, his whole situation as far as income and when he would be available. And so that was nice to have that support. Let's just say I had a veteran. If I was representing a veteran, I would definitely go to you guys for some help, because I don't know it all. I had a client at one point that wanted to buy land with, I think it was 10 acres of crops, avocados and lemons, like a $10 million property. But then he had a bunch of things going on too with the divorce, et cetera. I was kind of glad that it was put on hold, because it gave me some more time. I was nervous. I didn't want to mess up that big of a deal, and I never sold land like that. So it's good to have that support within our community, and it's nice to know who to turn to, and on the other end, help out if you can, because as a new agent, when I was new, I remember, I'm not going to say his name, but he was a very well-known seasoned agent, and I would call to ask questions about the property. He was very short with me, as if he knew I was a rookie, just like you said, Jim, and wasn't helpful whatsoever. And I try not to take it personal, but it was a bummer that we couldn't support one another. So yeah, that's got to remember that
that should never happen.
Right. We got to remember that we were all there at one point.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
I think some agents, unfortunately, lose sight of that and get wrapped up in all this stuff. But one thing that, just thinking, listening to your experience with who you're working with, I'm a huge proponent of the MRP designation. It's Brandon just completed. He can give you a fresh perspective. I did mine a few years ago, but what I like about that, it's not terribly expensive. It's not a ton of courses. You can do it in a few days. And what it'll do is it'll give you an insight into the active duty folks, and then even some separatees/retirees, veterans, but it'll give you some insight into it that you may not get for a long time. It'd be hard to kind of gain that type of experience until you get to work with a lot of those folks. But between the MRP and you talk to lenders, Jason, Mark, you know, folks who've done some VA deals in the past, good time to maybe go have, when we can ever get back to Wood Ranch or any place like that, but, you know, go and get yourself a nice iced tea and a Cobb salad or something. I'm trying to think skinny here. I'm thinking ribs right now, but I'm talking about Cobb salads and stuff, right? So I'm trying to stay away from the ribs. But you sit down over a nice lunch and, you know, share some notes and insight. And I think, Blanca, your instincts, I keep going back to this because I can't emphasize that enough. Your instincts are basically your active device of your integrity, right? Your integrity, your moral compass, it is what it is. And your instincts kind of get to display that and absorb it and use it and all that. When you sit down with someone like an active duty person, a veteran, a policeman, a fireman, nurse, teacher, anybody, you know, people who tend to serve others, more times than not, they're already bringing a humble perspective to begin with, because that's the nature of what they do. And for us, what I've always thought, one of the reasons that this came out and it wasn't, you know, Ramey Realty or Paradise Estates Part 2, the main reason this came out as Veteran Home Services is when I shut down my doors in 2008 and I went to the base, I mean, I was devastated. Everything I put into that company and my family, and watch all my friends, we had 28, 29 agents at one point, you know, watching 28 agents, me having to give them their license, send them referrals or recommendations, whatever, and watch them go out the door. And I went to the base, I had my tail between my legs. And real quickly, I found out that people there were in much worse shape than I was. I was just feeling sorry for myself. But I got over there, and my job was to try to help these people keep their security clearances so they could keep their jobs. And most of it was being driven by bad loans they were stuck in the middle of, or they had gotten into a situation where they couldn't get a loan mod out. And, you know, that was the core of a lot of my job, was that counselor. But I also just got in day-to-day life of what a young couple goes through, a young 19-year-old kid away from home, you know, the finances and the strains and just the lifestyles. I left at 17, but I went straight to the ship, and the Navy told me how to act. So I just grew up that way. But these kids, a different time, different world, and I see the challenges they face. Now we're at war for the last 17 years. PTSD's off the charts. So I look at I had guys sitting down there that had traumatic brain injuries that couldn't sit still, and their wives were taking notes because I'm doing a counseling session. This poor guy's thinking something's coming through the wall at him. So the experiences I had over there for the 6 years I did that kind of forged my thought process when I came out. Was I want to build something that I can drive for my family and show the appreciation for anyone who serves. If veteran just kind of made sense, but a veteran does not necessarily military. A veteran can be someone who's experienced and seasoned in their profession. What I'm looking at are, we try to represent people who could use our services, but we try to represent them with a sense, we're privileged. Every client we get, it's a privilege. Every agent who works with us is a privilege. Especially, we try to look at like-minded folks, because we know what we're in the middle of. We have to go out and help people make this huge decision in their life, hopefully keep them on a straight path so they don't end up in some counselor's office down the road where they're dealing with PTSD and now they're yanking their home off from under them. One last story. I actually had a kid come into me. He had a foreclosure notice on his door. His wife was in Kansas. He gets home. He left in December, started an allotment for his house payment. Some dipstick canceled his allotment, put all of his money into a B of A savings account, never paid one mortgage payment. Mama goes home to Olathe, Kansas to have a baby. She's not getting any of this stuff. He's in Afghanistan serving his country. They go sell his damn house out from underneath him. He comes back He gets back at the end of August. They had the auction like August 12th or something. He gets back August 30th. He comes back. He goes, Mr. Ramey, they sold my house out from under me. It's like, what are you talking about? He tells me this whole story. And this one resonates because of so many things involved. But to try to shorten it, I was able to, my other son, Mark, worked at B of A. He gave me a backdoor number to a local vice president. More times than not, all these guys would get the 1-800 number to the masses, right? Call this number for whatever customer service, and they would read a script and they would just pawn you off. Well, I was able to get a VP that I told them this story, and they were able to reverse this sale. That the desperation he had with this young wife that he couldn't bring out, or had a baby he hadn't met yet, that resonated. Just that, there was a ton of stories, but that one resonated. And my thought was, when we came out, we were going to start veteran home services to try to give something back, right? Try to get something back to the community and really build it with, we just picked up Leslie Fernandez, and we're so fortunate to have her. I see her smile on her face right now. I've only met her, I think, once or twice, but Brandon speaks volumes about her. Would be a great fit because I know that her heart's in the right spot, and we try to affiliate ourselves with people like that. We try to look at lenders who are feeling the same way, and it's just a privilege to be part of this community. And what we do, it's a blessing. We're really blessed, you know, in so many ways. So I appreciate you helping the folks you help, policemen. You know, I know your story is a sad, you know, there's some sad components to it. But your heart is there. You're a fighter. You're a patriot, and that kind of comes back to the core. I'm going to shut up real quick. Is when I say patriot, you don't have to have a DD 214 to be a patriot. You don't even have to fly the flag in your back of your wall or in your house. Patriot is just an appreciation for self, country, and God, you know, and community. And so far, that's all I've seen with the people that's been involved in your productions here, Brand. So I appreciate being a small part of it.
You've been a huge part of it, and you're the original influence of my passion for this business. So 2 people I want to make sure I don't forget, and you already mentioned Leslie. Leslie, number 1, I want to congratulate you on coming in and rocking and rolling, opening your first escrow today. Congratulations on that.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Still there, Leslie?
Hey, Brendan. Thank you.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Nice job. And any questions that you have for Jason or my dad, and I know you know both of them, and you can ask them anytime, but anything with the group. And then I do want to make sure, Patty, if you're still hanging in there, I want to make sure we give you a shot, and I appreciate you hanging in.
So no questions. I think that, Jim, the information you went over was perfect. It's really important as agents to guide our clients in the best way we can. And you hit the nail on the head with almost everything. So thank you so much for going over that with us.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Leslie, again, and excited about all the great things you're going to continue to do. So just keep up the great work. And real quick, if you're okay, Patty,
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, Patty, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, this is beautiful, and I've known your dad for, what is it, over 20 years now?
Yeah.
And then I met, you know, the whole family, and I just want to say that you guys are just an amazing family. You're, for sure, you know, just very honest, and it's great to see you guys, and thank you for doing this for all of us.
Thank you for hanging in.
That means a lot, Patty, coming from you, and I hope you know how much we appreciate you and just your friendship, and I hope we can continue, you know, so we got to reconnect, and I know
absolutely
we're all busy and dealing with all the crazy changes lately, but anytime I do any of these things, or my dad does something like this coming up in the future, we definitely would love for you to continue to join us, because I know you have a lot to offer to the industry as well. And I know you're passionate about real estate. So as much as we can keep you connected, not just friendship, friendship, right, but also business-wise, we'd love to have you.
Absolutely.
Patty's the one that kept the office together at Remax when I was there in the 90s. He kept us all out of trouble.
I wanted to tell you that you're still on Facebook Live, so you know you've only brought up good things. So you know.
Nah, it was good times, good people, and I still can
Yes.
see her smiling face. Real quick, just a quick, but we're
Love you
almost
guys.
family. We're almost family, right?
Yes. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to, you know, to more. Thank you so much.